10th, Planning Board Workshop. And first agenda item would be Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next is the master plan chapter review of the energy chapter.
Yes.
Bart, do you want to have Joe come up and do this? Or
Yeah,
go through
I
each
can basically
item?
show the presentation that was given to the master plan subcommittee, kind of
Perfect.
really explains it well. Over the past few months, the energy chapter has been developed by the Energy Environment Committee, and the reason why we're able to do this is through the enabling legislation from the RSA 672, 3N, and it gives discretionary ability to municipalities to develop an energy chapter, help plan for that for the future. So part of the history of energy in Newmarket, at least the more recent one, is it's been a lot of effort to join the Community Power Coalition, really have some proclamations to make energy efficiency and more friendly environmental policies a priority of the municipality. And as time has gone along, we have joined Community Power, and now the town has decided, at least the planning board and the subcommittees, that it's time to have an actual plan in place, and the appropriate spot for that would be in the master plan. This approach was confirmed. This is actually the people that actually worked on it, so just kudos to them for all the hard work, Joe, thank you, and the Energy Environment Committee, really great work doing this. And so again, through the master plan survey results, a significant amount of respondents find it beneficial for the town to consider. So at least they're interested in pursuing such ideas. And then again, level of interest in partnering with the town. So again, showing there's rational community support for this. It kind of confirms what the town council, with their initiatives, and again, a bunch of different responses on what we should do from an energy perspective. This was at the visioning workshop. Get which one? We had two. And again, these are kind of what the priorities of those respondents. So for those who haven't been as involved with this process, we divided the chapter into 5 sections, 5 goals. We call them themes. And one of them is called vibrancy. And then we have connectivity, accessibility, affordability, and resiliency. So the idea is to kind of approach each chapter with through these lenses, and from those lenses, there's just going to be little different approaches on what we want to do. And then, all these chapters will have the same themes, but also, different actions in order to achieve those themes through the chapters. So again, the first one being vibrancy, and these are the main goals of the vibrancy chapter, theme from an energy perspective. So again, this one's related to the first one, land use, making sure that it's supportive of land use ordinances that implement energy efficiency and sustainability measures, and also encouraging better building practices, as much as we're permitted to do under the RSAs, and encourage is the placement of buildings, using passive energy opportunities, implementing solar energy systems, or whatnot, and education as well. It's from a vibrancy lens, and then from a connectivity angle, working with the transportation partners in town and within the region to offer multimodal opportunities, and that be public transportation, bicyclists, more pedestrian infrastructure, so that the reliance on vehicles is less so. And then from a municipal operations standpoint, as time moves on, transition to more of an electric fleet where applicable and feasible, and then providing opportunities for folks in town in public realm to charge, and then also encouraging private landowners to do the same. And then all of this will have an end effect of reducing greenhouse gases and emissions as electrification becomes more prominent. As we move to affordability and accessibility, continuing to audit municipal infrastructure and assets in order to become more efficient and reduce energy consumption and improve cost effectiveness. Introduce policies or promote policies and encouragement with local businesses to do the same. And encourage, and you see here, where possible and permitted, offer financial assistance or technical assistance to help private entities. So again, improving that private-public partnership. And then in the fourth one being transition to renewable heating sources. And I guess there would be cooling as well. I think that'd be good to add there. And then resiliency is to continue our partnership with the Community Power Coalition and provide ratepayers who are adopted into it better value, and hopefully that better value becomes more and more, it's more renewable energy that we're consuming. And then the last one, just becoming more, more responsible and as a municipality, and making climate or at least energy policy more upfront in decision making. So if that means like having battery energy generation, or making sure that we have solar panels where we need to, or does it mean having our own energy production in whatever capacity. So that's from a resiliency standpoint. And that's kind of the 10,000 foot view. And this is, like I said, this is from the last committee. So the master plan subcommittee last reviewed this in May. They had their first pass, but Val is on that chair in the committee. Right? James, yeah, you're there, right? Can't remember. So many committees. And we thought it was a good chapter for the plan board to actually review right now. It's in such good shape. I would like to invite Joe, if you have any comments, anything I missed, Joe, you'd like to say in addition to this. Get the podium for that.
Hi, I'm Joe Lamontina from my town council, and also the town council representative of the energy and environment. We actually started the master plan well before we started to agree to the town plan as a whole. We looked at the existing master plan and saw that there was a spot for a chapter on energy, but there was actually nothing there. So we started doing it really about 3 years ago. We started. After about a year and a half of work, then the town decided that they were going to redo the whole master plan,
And it worked out nicely. We pretty much had our outline done, a lot of the stuff done. So then Bart took over, and I think, when you look at the energy chapter, I mean, there's a lot of words, a lot of nice things, a lot of pie in the sky type stuff, but the reality is we are working to try to get to a energy efficient community. That's what we would like to do. One of the things we have done is with Newmarket Community Power, we've joined with 67 other communities to bring aggregation or community power to different municipalities. With Newmarket Community Power, we do have the option right now of supplying electric energy, 100% clean electric energy. It's more costly at the moment, so we're not recommending to the town council to actually move up to that, but one of the goals that we have is at some point in time in the future, preferably by 2050, probably won't be around by then, but by 2050 to be 100% clean energy. And like I said, we have the opportunity to do that now with Newmarket Community Power, but again, it's more costly to do that. But anyway, back to the master plan. I think after looking at what we've done, I think the master plan the energy chapter of the master plan, it's a pretty good document. Like I say, there's a lot of nice words in there, a lot of pie in the sky, but it is things that I think ultimately benefits the community, benefits businesses. It helps make Newmarket what it is. That's pretty much what I hope you approve it. I would ask you to approve the plan as it is, and that's pretty much what I got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Joe, if you said, thank you so much for your work and for the committee's work. Does anyone have any particular questions for Joe?
One quick
Bill?
question, and not to get into detail, that 100% clean portfolio, I'm just curious, what is that made up of? That must include nuclear,
It does include nuclear, wind, solar.
nuclear wind, solar?
And those are the main ones that I'm aware of. It does include nuclear.
Geothermal usually falls into that too, but I'm not aware of any of those in the area.
Is there geothermal, Joe? Is there geothermal?
I don't recall if the thermal is in there. There is a sheet that I can get, and I'll give it to Bart, and he can pass it out, that shows what the different things are made up of.
But there is a reference to geothermal in there.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking hydroelectric as well. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Joe, you mentioned a couple of times pie in the sky. I think a lot of what the chapter is not. I think people would prefer, so it's not the pie in the sky. So what would you be referring to with what would be pie in the sky?
Ideally, I'd like to see at some point in time, say all town vehicles completely electric. I'm not sure if that's really doable. It's not doable, I think, right now, but certainly maybe in the future that's doable. To get
Taking away the money aspect of it, you technically could do it.
Technically, you could, yeah. Can you put all your police cruisers and all your fire engines on all electric? I don't think the technology is there at this point. By 2050, I got to believe that that's going to happen sooner or later.
One hybrid police cruiser.
Yeah, hybrids is like a great stepping stone. I think we could do more switching to more hybrid.
So the first leading slide, which is probably the back end, we're really showing the falls. The insinuation there is hydro in an energy chapter. Do you really think that is feasible, or what would be the obstacles to
I had talked to Rick about that
in the
at
next
one
10
point.
years?
It's technically feasible to put a hydro generator at the dam.
Do we have do we own the land to do that?
That I don't know. I just know it's technically feasible, cost-wise, and it's probably prohibitive. And like you say, I don't know if we own all the land. Right off to the dam, like towards the Bryant Rock part there, it's actually potentially set up that you could put some kind of hydro generator there. Okay. One of the things I'm hoping to work on in the not too distant future Well, we have two things going on. Right now, we have a study going on for putting some kind of solar panels down by the Sewell well.
Yeah.
Lindsay's kind of like leading that up. It's a 5 megawatt facility. It's a large facility. There's potentially a couple of issues there. One is, the residents around there aren't particularly in favor of a big, large array in that conservation area there. But also, too, I think, from what Lindsay told me, is that part of the land there isn't suitable. It's wetland. It's not suitable for a really large array. We could probably do something there. That's one thing that we are working on, getting some kind of solar as a first step here in Newmarket. One of the things I would like to push or start looking at is battery storage down by, down on New Road, down by the Public Works, down by the Waterworks. If we could do some kind of generation into batteries there and feed that back to the line, I think that's a great thing. And the Community Power Coalition has already said that if we can do, I've talked with them, I was on their board of directors, just got off the board of directors, but I'm still involved with them. They said, if we can come up with some kind of battery storage, that they would love to be a part of that. So.
Do you see at the council level, or more so your committee level, spending time and resources over the next 10 years trying to do more research on the hydro aspect?
Pretty much kind of like rule that out. Only, just an initial discussion. I mean, to me, the dam is the ideal place. I have kind of floated the idea and haven't really talked about it, but maybe down at the water treatment plant, if we could run some kind of like a PTO, a takeoff of the generators that are down there to generate electricity to charge the batteries down there, okay, and then at night draw from there. I think there's we can do a study, and if I can somehow make it justifiable, I think the council, offhand, I think they would be willing to see, okay, they would say to Bart, okay, what can we get for grants, or what can we do? I think it's feasible.
Appreciate it. Any other questions for Joe? And are you planning to stick around? I know.
I'm
sorry,
here till
Jeff.
7. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
Is there, I didn't see it, maybe I missed it, is there, have you guys discussed talking to the planning board about potential, incentives for, if you do a subdivision and you install solar as part of the initial construction? If so like incentives for people developing land in town, or even maybe rebuilding or renovating a building, giving them different incentives for the installation of solar on the property as part of an ordinance?
There's actually already an ordinance now that exists that if you add solar to it, I think you can increase your property by a certain amount.
On an ADI,
An ADU.
yeah, or ADU, sorry.
You can increase your property by a certain amount, and also too, if you add solar to your system, to your house or whatever, it doesn't increase the value, or you're tax exempt on the value of the solar array that you put in.
Right, yeah, I don't mean just on an ADU though, I mean.
No, Jeff. Well, as we go through this, you're going to see it. It's in the action item list. Yeah. Yeah, just reviewing the ordinances relative to
No, I did
offering
see-
incentives
No,
for
I did see that.
commercial, residential.
Yeah, I did see that, I didn't know if you had any specific,
Okay.
I didn't know if you had any specific thoughts. But yeah, I did see that in the goals, that's what I highlighted asking.
That would be more in our realm.
Right.
Right, but I didn't know
But
if they
if
had
they-
suggestions for this.
Jane?
Excuse me, I like the idea of the solar and all, but solar panels last 25 years, and that's it. So we'd have to make sure that we have a policy in place to how are we going to get rid of the old panels, because there's so much toxicity in it. I want to make sure that we just have a plan for that as well.
I'd say we don't at this point, but yes.
Yeah, it's just something to think of. There's a major drive in the industry right now to create plans for the solar panels that were installed 25 years ago, because now they're no good anymore, and they're dying. So where are people going to put them? And for the new ones that the town's considering, maybe we can plan about what happens in 25 years to them. I just don't want us to be like, oh geez, those guys didn't think of that.
With any, I've seen in other communities, other ordinances.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll speak up. I've seen in other communities, other ordinances, there's a decommissioning clause. So when they, when they do expire, whoever owns it at the time has to take them away properly. So they just don't sit there. They have to go away.
Right, but.
Yeah, but where do they go? That's another question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that someone's just putting it in people's backyards, that's all.
Yeah.
So maybe we could add that into that, I guess, the resiliency section?
Yeah.
But we'll go through,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the plan is to go through both documents.
Bart, I can forward you an article that kind of just talks about that and how some companies are, if they make them,
Yeah.
they'll have a plan with you to get rid of them at the end of their life, that's
Yep.
all. So thank you.
Yeah, I like the looking for, when they're sourcing this stuff, looking for companies that already factor that in, because
Right.
I feel like, at least currently, adding things to landfills is not, seems to be at the state level, not really something that the state is entertaining, new landfills, and so if we're adding a bunch of stuff, yeah, you're kind of creating a future problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just in the sourcing side of it,
It
putting
should
that
be.
as in like a, if you're going to do this, make sure that that's there.
I think from a town policy procurement, we could do that. But I don't think we can tell a private landowner, where are you getting your solar panels?
Right.
I
But
think
it-
that's a little too far, I think.
Yeah, I feel like most of this stuff is town focused.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like there's already incentives for residential. I don't know what more the town would be able to do. Because there was like things talking about in here about looking at incentives for residential. I just don't know, like, the town's not in a position to just start shelling out money.
Well,
Put solar on, put solar on.
Incentive from, and this is to Jeff's point, maybe it's a density bonus in the development. If they provide solar panel, or square footage,
Yeah.
within the house. We don't regulate square footage in homes, per se. Besides ADUs. But I think it's, again, planning board come up with those policies, do we want to incentivize that, right? Do we want to make sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's kind of two tracks. There's the, what can the town do for itself, which we have a lot more control over kind of what we do for that, versus the carrot for the general public to see what we can do. I will say with the hydro, I'm fine leaving it in there, but I don't see that as feasible from a cost perspective, because that adds a lot of maintenance, and you have a solar, you just put it up there and there's like almost no operational cost to it. It just runs. With hydro though, that's going to be a burden on some kind of staffing in town, I think, to maintain that and run it, operate it. And I know Durham just had their whole thing about their dam, tearing it down, not tearing it down, went to public, what was it, referendum or something, so that might become in theory it might sound good, but in practice that might be a bit more challenging to implement. But aspirationally, if you want to put it on there, something to consider, I don't have an issue with that. I just don't see it as viable in the long run.
Well, so I'm going to recommend, because we have another half hour here for our business meeting, and I think the goal would be to try to get the planning board, consensus on this chapter and then move it forward to public hearing, correct?
Yeah, that's something we can probably talk about at the end of this meeting,
Yeah.
is a process.
So let's just, let's start with the energy chapter, the presentation Bart did, because this would be kind of a link to the, on the website, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Does anyone have any comment on, you didn't have it up, Bart, but the first photo, the one I'm referring to, is is this last picture? I was just going to suggest that we do an aerial of, is it Public Works that has all the panels on it?
Yeah.
I think if the big focus, and it seems to be through the chapter, is solar or, yeah, that just seems to come through more than hydro.
I mean, sorry.
And I'm just saying that, so this is going to be the front end to the public. The idea is that people will go through, or a developer or whatever, they'll be going to the website and not to the actual document.
Yeah,
sit back
If
there.
I had to resort to
Yeah.
I think the image personally speaks well to a combination of energy, environment, and history, because it is using the environment to create energy historically, how our town's done that. May not be the current
Yeah.
or the future, but
Yeah, it
it
certainly-
kind of makes you think about the environment.
That's a good point.
And energy.
Yeah.
at the same time.
It's historically relevant.
All right, so keeping slide 1 as is.
So, yeah, this, right here, this is just the slides. This won't technically be into the master plan, so this
No,
is what,
this will be, if you go on the website, what will come up, correct?
what will come up.
If you go to the way we're going to present this is we'll have almost
Oh,
like the
yeah, so
slide
in the
presentations
slide,
as will be the link from the website, as opposed
Bring that
to each
up.
page of the, going through each page of the actual chapter. Anyone have any comments? Maybe, Barb, if you put up slide 2? Anyone have any comments on that, as far as changes, additions? Everyone's good with 2?
Very popular. 73% of people are on it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good with 2. 3, no changes there. And again, Joe, thanks to everyone. I guess the only comment I will make on this, and we'll take it up at the business meeting, we still need a planning board member appointee to this, to the actual committee. And we have that on our agenda, right, Bart?
We do? Yeah.
Okay, thanks. 4, 5, these are all, and 6 are actually just summaries. Then we're getting into the vision.
I guess, were there any other survey responses not put in here? Worth
I have to
considering?
look, I just want a clarification. This right here, this presentation isn't
Mhm.
what's going to be on the online.
So what is? But we're doing that differently for other chapters.
Right, so at all the chapters, I'm going to show you what they would look like right now, because we have a draft housing.
Well, no, you don't have to, Bart. If
Okay.
none of this is going online,
Yeah.
so this just ends tonight.
Correct.
Then let's just skip through, let's just
Yeah.
skip over this
Yeah.
and get into the chapter.
Yeah, let's get in the chapter.
All right. Okay. All right, so we've got, you want to pull that up?
Yep.
Can I ask up front, how would you like to receive edits and comments? I mean, it's a PDF.
Yep. So I would focus on content right now. As I said in the email I sent out, we're going to have a whole formatting team with all one consistent voice at the end, because this was all done by a lot of different people, all these different chapters. So at the end, once they all become more of a final draft, editing team's going to come in and create that voice and make sure everything's consistent. So my goal for you all is to send content, more content specific. This is, I think this is a good idea, this should be added, more so than formatting and editing.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think the best way to do that after this meeting is direct message me. So we don't create a quorum.
Good.
Or we can, for the next meeting, or maybe it's during the regular business meeting, we can have a small discussion of what we discussed today, if there are any edits, so it's something we can talk about process.
Yeah, let's get through the document
Yeah.
and see, I think everyone spent time reading this, preparing for this workshop, so we can go through and
Right.
you can get our comments and then make the decision at the end of the workshop where we want to move it.
So I guess who's the target audience for this? Like when I'm reading through this, because I think information-wise this is fine, and I know I don't have strong opinions on stuff in there, but like as far as is it speaking to the right people, what we want to get across? Like who's the target audience? Is it the town working on implementing these things? Is it
It's to the community, what the town has agreed upon to achieve, what the plan board has set, the vision. So the plan board is speaking to the town on, this is what we decided how to proceed with implementing our energy goals.
hey, we said we want more energy efficiency. Oh, I'm looking at such a place, that's a great idea. I'm gonna look at doing that for my own building.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Well,
like,
and the premise of the master plan is to drive any recommendations of ordinances that the town council would, that the planning board would be recommending to the council to adopt. Is it, is it consistent with the master plan?
Yeah.
Is the basis of any ordinance that we put forward?
They have to be consistent. They can't be- I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just.
ideally.
right.
Not.
But then, and then when it goes to the council, there's gonna be different aspects of, I'm just saying that's a land use, ordinance. There are the ordinances and action items, right, that are here that other entities within town would be responsible for.
Yeah, I guess
Whether it's
I'm kind of
CIP or,
I feel less concerned about, like, it's aspirational, it's goals, it's like, hey, it's what we'd like to see, so it's less like, oh, we're making law, let's be really specific on the exact verbiage, it's more content-wise, so I think, I couldn't think of anything that I would want to see added, I guess, is kind of, like, reading through it, seems good, seems some reasonable goals.
all right, so I'm just gonna go through these,
Sounds good.
okay? Anybody have any comments on I think page 1 is more like, as Bart said, the consistency of all the chapters, whether this gets run through AI or more of one like one. Might be some word or structure edits. So we weren't gonna spend time on that. Anybody on page 2 have any thoughts or changes? Discussion? I did have a comment. I thought at the bottom of page 2, master plan themes and goals. And we're running into this with other chapters.
Yeah, okay.
To just delete that whole section and just jump into each section below on page 3, and then get into the vibrancy and all the other ones, because this is just repetitive.
Okay, so just have that really in the initial introduction to the master plan, right?
Yeah,
Have this and
Yeah.
then,
Because everybody does it.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
we just get right into, for energy, each section below examines them if applicable.
That assumes someone's reading the entire master plan.
Well, and as soon as we put it together so that people understand what the vision is, right? Because that's really where it's gonna identify how each chapter is laid out, and what the overriding vision is.
so I think we keep the last just paragraph maybe?
Yeah,
Just as
that was
a,
my recommendation, keep the last paragraph and then jump right into each one as to what it means to this particular chapter.
And Jeff, to your point, there'd be a hyperlink there that would jump back to the page where it explained the themes and goals.
And each one of the sections repeats what it says there already, so it's in there
Right,
twice.
it's
as
just
well.
redundant,
Well, that's exact verbiage.
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's still in there even if we cut this whole thing.
Yeah, so we say it 3 times. Yeah.
Right.
It's important.
So that's that particular section. Anybody else have any comments on anything on 3? On 4? Or I'll send you some word edits, but,
Yep.
Yeah, there's some structural
Yeah.
things that,
so, this
Could
whole
use some help.
section,
Is that on this as well? The grammar?
yeah, they're gonna deal with all that.
Yeah.
well, can we clarify that though? Because formatting
Yes,
is
grammar,
not,
Yeah.
grammar is absolutely included in that as well?
yes,
Okay.
voice, grammar, formatting.
When we speak about sustainable development, are we really thinking about sustainable energy efficient developments? Is that a term that the committee was using? Doesn't come through on this.
I think
So that's
I think
on,
yeah.
That's in the first paragraph.
I feel like it's a very broad phrasing as it is, just
Yeah.
sustainable. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could be carried out.
And I just didn't see how, if you come down to the, there's that number, but, the third sentence.
With communities?
Sustainable development ties together concerns for the carrying capacity of natural systems with the social challenges. This seems to me to kind of move away from the energy conversation,
Okay.
or renewable energies, etc.
We look at that.
Anything else, anyone on the floor?
I read it as integrating land use was like hydro.
I think it's just the word social in an energy environment. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's some overlap in terms of how people live in their environment. There's a certain social element to that, but I don't feel strongly about gutting it or keeping it.
Are they trying to like rope it into other chapters? Like, is that something that might be discussed in other chapters?
It is, because that's in some of the, yeah, as far as land use chapter, natural resource chapter.
I think there's social challenges involved in that, you know, in vibrancy, I guess, maybe, perhaps, and if you're trying to create like a sustainable community, and you're trying to, you know, encourage a denser population downtown, like a denser, a higher population density in the downtown area, but people of community don't really want to live in a highly dense area that might, you know, require less travel to move around.
No, I like how the, in the committee's draft, they're really talking about some of the traditional development patterns and maintaining those.
And later it does talk about transportation.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people really liked, like the number one, was that like image with the board with all like those stickers with the different options. But they talked about people with mobility issues, I
Yeah.
think was the phrasing, having like transit. So there is a social element in some of these recommendations.
Any comments on 5? So I was wondering again, another goal is to keep these really succinct and then to have like links to the appendixes. When we get into, in New Hampshire, the sales of, you know, EVs have increased, et cetera, and then all of the charts, would that make more sense to be in an appendix?
Yeah, and that's where the hyperlinks would be.
Yeah, so I would just say
deployed.
move, I mean, that's all great information, but just move it to an appendix.
Okay. That's the first paragraph.
That way there, we're really staying more focused on, through the master plan, what we're trying to do in Newmarket, and then the data that's supporting all that is in the appendixes. Anything on 6? That's what we just talked about.
This might not
Amy?
necessarily be anything here, but I was really struck by the numbers in this table. I'm having a hard time with the fact that we're 6,000 cars less over a 2-year period. And that just,
Yeah, could you, where did the data come from on this?
Town clerk.
like, is that a typo? I mean, that number, it just, we didn't get smaller, the town's been growing, and that's a very
Oh, yeah, so it's
significant
town clerk.
difference in a 2-year period.
Can we check that part?
I had the same thought. What if we had the same time period? 2024 was a full year, or
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, and then you'd think there'd be more EVs, not less. Or hybrid.
People registered at
Yeah.
Although-
cars coming
So,
in
yeah, they're probably gonna register that.
2022.
So we'll have that full year now.
Yeah, all right, so
They
Bart,
have to be
Bart will
renewed
check
each
that.
year, so it's still like, it's definitely worth another look
No,
to
no,
make sure
Jamie,
that's
excellent.
accurate.
Yeah, no, great to pick that up. Anything on 7?
one more thing on 6.
Yeah.
I wondered if that $15 million that DOT got is still available, or has it been pulled back by federal money?
That's a good point.
Oh,
I
right.
got a feeling that it was pulled back, but I could be wrong.
Right. And then all that would get moved to the appendixes.
Yeah, I guess there's an interplay between what the state's doing and what we're doing, and I don't know, we don't have a lot of say in what the state's doing. So I don't know how much of this is like relevant to us and in our control. It's obviously relevant in the context of like, you're in the state and there's obviously trends that we're a part of. But I don't know if some of this can just be trimmed up that's heavily state focused that we can't really do anything about. Don't cut so much so that it loses the context of where we are in relative to the state, but
But I think relative to the narrative in the chapter as to the action item, it would be, looking for state and federal grants.
yeah, I think
that would
that's going
play
to
into it.
But as far as like number of vehicles registered and all that, it's I get why we're doing it. We're trying to show like, hey, is Newmarket part of this trend? How do we fit in it? But I don't see that there's enough data to be confident to read anything out of that. Because it literally says in here, the town clerk does not easily distinguish vehicle types. So you're like trying to pulling information of like, oh, this is how would you fit in the bigger picture, but we don't have the data, so I don't want to get ahead of or put out something that has a large variability in that could leave with the wrong impression. So I don't know. Not that I feel that strongly about it, but that would be a concern. Some of that. To your point of like, is 11,000 even accurate? I don't know that it's really doing anything. It's not really persuading.
Right, because currently there's no extra, like, road tax for an EV, right? I think there's just,
Yes.
there are none, right?
I think if we had solid data, we would know if more chargers in the town would be used. Because if we say, oh, there's no cars in the town, then
Right, you look at
does
this-
that justify?
You look at this statistic and you say, why do we get more chargers? There's so many more less EVs.
I was kind of surprised it was 165 electric.
I mean, I do got one, so there's one person in town.
I mean, hybrids are more.
You got one.
Well, Bart's gonna look into that.
Can I just say that
Yeah.
Terry does not collect the information, or the state doesn't collect the information on what our electric vehicles are hybrids. So we had to go by, how many Teslas we actually named, a couple of ones that we moved.
Yeah.
You're already talking about like the model,
Yeah.
model information on the registration.
Can you give me a count of the Teslas, the Prius hybrids, kind of
Yeah.
go by, exactly what we asked for. Because if they don't, I don't know if they're doing it now, but at the time they want to collect them.
Yeah. I definitely think if it's easy for them to somehow collect that data, it might help drive some of these decisions for the town. So it might be worth pursuing. Yeah.
But I believe the total vehicle count is accurate.
Okay.
I don't count myself.
I think there was a provision in that recent budget bill to increase registration fees for
Right.
electric vehicles.
This current cycle?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
To compensate for the lack of gas tax.
All right, so Bart, you're gonna look into that, but then,
And then
Zach's
synthesize.
point is what's gonna be the use of the data? So I think it's gonna be more, as to a master plan, we usually are backing up each chapter with data. So if the trend is that we'll have, if it really is less EVs, then why would we put resources and focus on charging stations?
Yeah. Yeah, and keeping that
Chicken
as a
and egg
goal.
thing.
But, I mean,
Maybe because there's no infrastructure.
that could be, that could be the reason.
There's
right?
definitely chicken egg. I mean, a lot of people
Yeah.
charge at home.
That too.
Okay.
Yeah, you could write in that there is a town, Newmarket's relatively kind of a destination location for people to come to. So we're not just trying to supply charging stations for people, residents of the town. It's residents and visitors to the town. So, I mean, that can be added if you take away the chart and say we don't really know how many people in this town own these types of cars exactly, but you don't have to say that, but, say that we would look to, encourage people to come to town, perhaps a little more with other facilities in place.
So excuse my ignorance on this, the chargers we have today that are in town, people aren't paying for that, the town's actually paying for that, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's like
when we're
three of them.
talking.
Done through a grant.
Right, so when we're talking about maybe establishing new ones, are we establishing new ones with meters on it? Or is the town gonna be paying for it?
That is so, that is so into the weeds.
Yeah, no, I guess
Right,
what I'm
so-
saying though is philosophically, if you look at, and I don't even know this for a fact, so help me again with this. If I look at a gallon of gas today from the Irving gas station, how much of that is taxes to pay for our roads? And as we develop a policy for this, is that something that we have to keep in mind as well, working with the state about how do we pay for all of this? 'Cause
I think that's a state level problem.
And
mean,
I would
we
agree.
be a small
I would agree. I would
pebble in
agree.
the bucket.
Or a council level problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, and I'm just
we're,
throwing it out
you know,
there.
We're kind of on the top of the mountain here.
I have
Um,
a question on the next page, except, but I would say that as someone that charges their car publicly sometimes, I have no problem paying.
Right.
So, because
No, and I
expect
would
to
agree
pay.
with that. And someone who
Yeah.
buys gas, I might have a problem with you not paying for it.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
So my.
You can subsidize, you could not subsidize, like,
Yeah,
there's,
I'm just throwing it out there as we're talking about the philosophical approach. to it.
I think we should try to look at adding more chargers and just leave it like that, maybe adding some of the qualitative of like, hey, it might incentivize more visits, local tourism. I
Yeah.
think that could be added in there.
I think this is all good discussion. We have 20 more pages to go.
One quick question on page 7.
Yeah.
Are there 3 chargers there
Are
at
there,
the library or just?
The library's free.
No, I read
No,
that
I
as
think
there's
there's
three.
three
in total.
One at the library.
It's just, needs to be touched up,
Yeah,
the sentence.
Okay.
there's 3 in the
The, you know, one at the park,
Municipal
one at the
chargers.
community center.
Anything, you talk a lot, and this is kind of in a couple of places on page 8. But there's very little talk about the school, right? Have there been like audits for the school?
Energy audits?
Energy audit.
I don't recall.
It's,
Sure, do you know, Joe?
In here, there's energy utilization of the schools.
no, I did see that, but just in the narrative, we keep talking about all these town hall, public works, fire, rescue, police, sunrise, say, senior library. I think the school is consuming, what, 80% of the electricity relative to the budgets? So that was just a comment that I think that we should make sure that we're including the school in any of these assets that we name out.
I also thought, as we're talking about budget planning in the future, then we can mention that as food planning. And bring this into the pattern. And I add that in my comment.
I mean, it does talk that they should continue to conduct audits of additional municipal operations, including buildings. So I guess you're asking, did they do it and we just didn't include it? Or are you saying we should specify they
It's
should
just
look at
tricky
it?
because it's a separate entity technically.
But it's not BART, okay? Okay, we as taxpayers,
Taxpayers pay for it, but.
right, but the town of Newmarket is not just this building and everyone that works in it, right? The town of Newmarket is everything we as citizens here, residents, taxpayers are supporting,
Right.
right? So I think as to the master plan, and we don't know where the charter commissions is going, right?
That's totally it.
This is, when we have our public meetings or whatever, it's not just about what the municipality is actually doing, it's the municipality, it's the whole town and the school. We always, keep talking about this entity and this entity, and it isn't. The town is everything related. So I just think that if we have an energy policy, wouldn't it be nice too that they're including the schools? And I think it does in some sections. I'm just calling this out, that you're calling out all these municipal buildings, and we've got these schools that are pretty big and huge potential for solar.
Yeah, I think,
I totally agree with you.
yeah,
I'm not
that's obvious.
just saying, yeah, good.
So as far as towards the end of page 9, before it gets into the goals, it talks about town partner with energy professionals to offer energy efficiency audits, residents, businesses, future tax incentive programs. So there's a decent amount through the state. What is it? NH Saves, I think. I don't know if that changes in the future. Maybe there's a way for the town to supplement some of that.
Yeah, there's no reference
But-
to New Hampshire Saves.
But yeah, I
Is
think
there?
recognizing some of the partner, I guess, state level might help in that statement. Whether it's bolstering, replacing, who knows where that program goes in the future, phases out.
And that's a good point, because if you're not getting like a paper statement from Eversource, you know, you're not thinking about New Hampshire Saves.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've seen them publicize that program quite a bit.
Doesn't New Hampshire Clean Energy also provide assistance? You were just on that board, Joe?
I just finished 3 years on the board for community power.
Do they have building technical guidance people?
Yes, we do, yeah, we contract with
Joe.
a company called Ascend.
That's fine.
Yes, the community power contracts with a company called Ascend. They supply all sorts of technical support for hedge funding. You know, we have to buy X amount of electricity prior to the rate period. You know, so we do have a lot of technical expertise. If that's the
Would
question.
they integrate, would they help a town planner or figure out what municipal building, how to?
No, they would not do. No.
They don't provide energy audits.
Right, they're contracted to community power. Community power itself would potentially help with coordinating audits of buildings of that.
Yeah, so maybe just in there, partnering with energy professionals such as,
Doesn't Eversource do that?
Yeah, that's New Hampshire Saves.
That's new, okay.
And Unitil has a similar.
yeah, I feel like
But
with community power taking
They're on
over, maybe
Eversource.
there's a missed opportunity to kind of replicate some of that. Well, but community power, we still get Eversource as the distributor, so
Right.
that you would still go through them.
I'm sorry, Joe?
Can I just say that, you know, one of the things that I think the Energy and Environment Committee would do at some point in time, we're going to be going to take a look at the master plan, the goals that we've set, and working with Bart and Lindsay, okay, what do we need to do? I see us doing more on like an educational type of thing. You know, we pick a goal and say, okay, let's start, say, recycling, as an example. We're going to start doing something with recycling, but we may look at, you know, hybrid vehicles or whatever. Okay, we may say, okay, that's one of our goals is to get the town to switch to more hybrid vehicles. We may be able to do some kind of educational thing and work with Bart and whatever and the departments to identify, okay, what vehicles do we have that are coming up to be renewed, and which ones can we potentially slot in as hybrid type vehicles, and then work with the town to purchase a hybrid vehicle. I see that the Energy and Environment Committee being a group that would kind of like start looking at the master plan and saying, what goals can we attack?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Just real quick. So part of this whole goal too is to get committees talking to each other. So I feel the planning board, being the overseer of this master plan, would be the perfect forum for reviewing the implementation guide and checking in and making sure who's responsible for what, which will be outlined. And then just making sure that we're moving forward, constantly moving forward. If not, then we're. And so that's kind of the, one of the foundations of this document, or really the purpose of this update, is to keep the conversations going, keep it alive. again, so Joe, that'd be like having a joint meeting potentially with the planning board to, update the board on what goals that you achieved, where you're working towards, and then where the planning board may help, or where they take on some of the responsibility.
Okay, page 10 is the resiliency. Any comments on that?
Is there any kind of aspect of like emergency resiliency that's relevant? I'm sure that like the fire department, all of them probably have backup generators. They're probably required to have that. But is there like an aspect outside of them?
Two things, yeah. We have a hazard mitigation plan that identifies, and we're going to have another actually chapter, community facilities. So that'll cover that too. But two outside plans: hazard mitigation, emergency development, EMS, emergency management plans. That would talk to that, speak to that point.
Because it kind of reads as like just more of a resiliency. Just reads more like, hey, let's just reemphasize that we want to try to get as much solar to basically rely less on outside energy production, which is definitely a form of resiliency for the town at large. I just wasn't sure if there's other aspects to resiliency than just that, because that's kind of all it really highlights.
Yeah, and some of the other chapters goes into the other aspects of resiliency as well.
That's fine then.
As you'll see.
Yeah. As energy resilience
There
goes
we
in
go.
this makes sense. Yeah.
That's my only comment, just a very quick broad comment. I know that the Energy and Environment Committee in its inception, that was in the first year that it was in place. I was on that board, and we focused on energy production and also kind of environmental impacts of our community. And we looked into recycling, we set up the compost thing, we started to look into solar a little bit, and talk about building efficiencies a little bit. I was only on there for a year, so I didn't really get much beyond that, but it's great, and I'm all about energy conservation and reducing our use of energy, but I don't see anything about kind of environmental impacts of the community. Reducing waste does also reduce energy consumption in a broader sense. So I didn't know if if that was kind of intentional to focus literally on energy only for the most part, and not so much on environmental impacts of the greater.
Yeah, so the waste aspect of it was community facilities. So for instance, like the transfer station, and that kind of answers, speaks to that. But this is more, like to your point, just energy focused, not, the waste management aspect of it. Yeah.
So maybe the committee's changed a little bit to more focus mostly.
Yeah, it's just kind of what the RSA is telling us to work on, and then what the committee was established for. Doesn't mean you can't work towards that. So.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe where my brain is going, so thanks for putting it to words. Because there's obviously the wetland study was just redone, there's floodplain maps, those seem to be behind, at least nationally, I don't know about locally. There's stormwater runoff, the built environment impacting some of that, so I think there's opportunities to take a look at that for us, whether that doesn't have to be in this per se, but maybe moving forward, if it's that committee or different committee, there might be aspects of that that play into resiliency environment stuff.
Right, so given time, that page 11 is just the wrap-up of the main chapter, and then after that will be appendixes. So if did anyone have any comments about the goals at the top? And do we want to keep in the hydroelectric or the dams?
I think it's fine
You
as
said
a
it's-
goal to look at, I just don't know that it would ever
Yeah.
come to fruition.
Okay, so we kind of got through the meat of the chapter. Everything else is kind of backup data. If anybody has any questions or comments on that, I would say direct them to Bart directly. And then, Joe, I know you have to get out of here. Can you just take 30 seconds and kind of explain your committee? Because I know we need a rep on it.
Energy environment, we need a.
We need a
like
planning
rep.
board rep. So if you could just take one, half a minute and explain the committee and,
Yep, so, the Energy and Environment Committee does have 9 members, one of them being an appointed member from the Planning Board. And basically, we want to make sure that, a lot of the things that we cover right here in the goals and whatever are impacted, by what the Planning Board decides. So we would like a member from the Planning Board to be on the Energy and Environment Committee, to just be an interface and a spokesperson for what the Planning Board might decide. A couple of things. So we've just wrapped up the community. For the last couple of years, we've been working on getting community power up and running, and we've been working on the master plan. We've got those 2 things pretty much under our belt now. So the next things that we're going to start working on is education. We're going to start on recycling, reduce, reuse, and recycle campaign. We just had a meeting with Casella, the company that does the trash collection for Newmarket. Newmarket actually does pretty good right now as far as recycling goes, but we could do better with education. So anyway, bottom line is we are looking for somebody from the Planning Board. We greatly appreciate if somebody would volunteer. Okay.
thank
Anything
you.
else?
Appreciate it. Great. Scott, are you heading up to the meeting?
You staying here, or you going up?
I'm gonna stay here.
Okay. Okay, so, I think everyone get any additional comments to Bart, if you have any, particularly on the implementation and the goals section at the end, and then anything further in the appendixes. And then, well, maybe Bart, we put this on for public comments,
Yeah, I think
but in
public.
the business meeting, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody good with that? No more workshops on this particular chapter? Okay. All right, moving into our actual business meeting, I will call the Newmarket Planning Board.
Thank
Yep.
you.
We're not going to adjourn I'll take a motion to adjourn the
Starts
workshop.
slowly, yeah. Clean.
Motion to adjourn?
Who made the motion? Jamie?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, please welcome everyone to the June 10th Planning Board meeting. It's our regular business meeting. You want to pledge of allegiance again?
Let's do it again.
Okay.
It's on it.
Everyone please stand for
Yeah.
pledge of allegiance.
Some people weren't here.
Jane, I'll let you lead us. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Next up, public comments. Are there any members here from the public who wish to provide any comments on anything that is not on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I will close the public comments. Review and approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the last meeting's, the May 13th meeting minutes?
One edit and one comment.
Okay. Bill? You could just,
The
Give it-
edit up, first paragraph, line 34, the end, the discussion of corner lot setbacks and concerns with sight line, I think that's SRGHP.
that is correct.
Vision. The other comment, maybe I just missed this, but page 5, the bottom. When
At what line were you starting at?
on this comment, at the bottom of the page, the discussion about, I raised concern about parking requirements.
Okay, yeah.
Central.
Line 240.
924, yes. Bart, you had said, and I guess I missed it, you said that the state has applicable
Minimum park stand?
minimum parking requirements?
Yeah, I think it's a 1.5, one space, I think, for residential.
Okay.
Not minimum, maximum.
Maximum. Yeah, Maximum.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I think maybe I misspoke, maximum. So minimum,
Minimum makes no sense.
There
Yeah,
was state,
So there's no minimum.
there's no minimum.
right.
Right.
Yeah, so I misspoke. I think my intent was to say that there's a maximum, so it's capped at 1.
Yeah, so just maximum. Clarify that.
So that,
That's the current state law.
this doesn't really address that concern I had. It sounded like they'd have to come in with 1.5 spaces to address state requirements.
No.
No,
No, the state's not to require 1.5, it's the most you can ask for.
I know,
Yeah.
I was interpreting
Oh.
this as
Oh.
a minimum. that you-
No, so
oh,
I
yeah, I
guess
didn't read that.
my intent was that the state tells the municipalities that you can't require more than 1 space.
Which is all fine.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not really relevant to my concern,
Okay.
because who cares about the maximum?
Yeah.
So in line 240, 243, what you have in here, Bart, commented that there's still the applicable state law for parking, currently 1.5 spaces per unit, and that an alternative parking plan is also an option to be submitted. Does that need to be clarified then?
So, so the alternative parking plan is, for instance, if you can't, what the state law is trying to encourage is if you can't have it on the site, you can have it somewhere else.
I think Bart's comment was just basically informing us of what the state law is.
Okay.
That's how I read this.
Yeah,
Because
they were just talking about max of 1 per person, this says 1.5 per unit, so that's why I was getting confused which one was, and they were talking about minimums.
But I interpreted it not to worry, the state has its own requirements.
Oh, I didn't read that.
No.
But that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, I felt.
Yep.
That's what you felt at the conversation.
Yeah, the conversation. But,
Yeah, you were concerned about it.
right,
Bart stated, here's the law.
the law, that the 1.5 spaces is needed.
No, that's the maximum a municipality
No,
can
but it
require.
doesn't say that.
Yeah, so I
Doesn't say
think
that.
you want to clarify that. Is that,
Right.
Or, no, I think what Bill's, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to assume, that the conversation, you came out of that conversation differently than what was trying to be conveyed,
Yes.
right? Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just as I said, I
Yeah.
didn't, not to worry, the state has its own requirements
Okay.
at 1.5 spaces a unit.
So it was a miscommunication on my part, mea culpa.
Or misinterpretation.
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't read it that way.
Yeah.
They would clarify to add just a maximum to that note, that the state law is a maximum requirement of 1.
Right.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because you're concerned.
So just to clarify, Bill, I think you were concerned that we were requiring no parking requirements, right?
Yeah.
And then Bart commented that, well, the maximum that we can actually require by the state is 1.5, or the developer can, have an alternative plan. But it still wouldn't have addressed your 0 parking.
Right, but as it stated, as Bart commented, that there's still an applicable state.
Yes,
law
you're right.
parking,
Yeah,
currently
no, I see it
1.5
now.
spaces per unit.
Which is not correct.
Yeah, because it wouldn't address your concern.
Right, exactly.
The concern is no parking.
Trying to say.
Gotcha now.
In a long-winded way.
No.
Don't worry about the minimums, don't worry,
No.
there's a max.
Yeah, so Bart, you just amend that section.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else, any modifications? Clarifications, can I have a motion to approve with the amendment by Bill as to the correction of the spelling on site and clarification by Bart on line 240, 243. Is there a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Is there a second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, thank you. Next on the agenda, there's a public hearing that is pursuant to RSA 676-4, 32-9 for a special use permit. And Section 32-55, the Wetland Protection Overlay District, the municipal code of the town of Newmarket, New Hampshire, in regards to a public hearing for an application for a special use permit requested by the applicant Jim Phelps to disturb approximately 79 square feet of hydro-fee soils buffer for the purpose of connecting a new force main sewer line into an existing force main. The properties involved in this application are located at 4.5 and 8 North Main Street, tax map U2, lots 273 and 275, within the B1 zoning district and the Wetland Protection Overlay District. Bart, can you comment on the application as being complete?
Yes, it is substantially complete, and I recommend acceptance.
Do I have a motion to accept the application as substantially complete?
Motion to accept the application as substantially complete.
And is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the application completeness? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Mr. Phelps, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is James Phelps of 4.5 North Main Street in Newmarket.
Yeah.
I'll get it. It's a little rough. I may actually need new glasses as well.
Well, they talk about energy efficiency, right? It's like, let's turn off the lights.
These are working well now. Thank you. I have not been in front of the planning board before. I do not believe, and I'm not really familiar with the process. I plan to address the overview.
Yeah, if you could just explain what the proposal is.
Okay. Well, the proposal is a result of the leach field at the property of 8 North Main Street, which I also own, has failed, or at least has been overstressed. And to facilitate the septic at 8 North Main Street, the proposal is to create a pump station at the rear of 8 North Main Street where the current septic tank is, and have an outlet or force main across the boundary line where that cursor is right now, thank you, and tie into the existing force main at 4.5 North Main Street, which is also my property. As a result, the new septic from 8 North Main Street would tie into the sewer main beneath Route 108 without disturbing Route 108.
And just a clarification why we're here is this section right here.
Thank you, Bart.
Yep.
Yes, the direction of the new force main highlighted in yellow is intentional to skirt or to be outside of the buffer, the poorly drained soil wetland buffer as much as possible. But the existing force main appears to be within it, so we're going to be disturbing the buffer by approximately 78 square feet.
Only up in that corner.
Yeah.
That is correct. Where the yellow heading north, yes, exactly where Bart has it.
We'll zoom in a little more. Our eyes.
Do any members have any questions for Mr. Phelps? Is there a reason you're not tying directly into the main to the actual sewer main?
There's 3, and in no particular order. 1, New Hampshire DOT does not want Route 108 disturbed. 2 is cost. It should be more cost effective than tying into the sewer main underneath Route 108. And the third is disturbance. If we were to tie into the sewer main under Route 108, we would have approximately 90 feet of disturbance within that buffer, if not in direct wetland.
So as far as the disturbance of 108, when all of the sewer and water lines were upgraded, was there not a tie-in brought over to the lot?
I'm afraid not.
How long have you owned the two properties?
I own the property at 4.5 North Main Street, going on 24 years, and the property at 8 North Main Street, going on now 19 years.
Yeah, so this is replacing your leach field, so you're basically going to town sewer now.
That is correct.
Okay.
And then that area of the wetland you would be crossing would be along lot 274? That's a whole wetland in there.
No, I think the properties are, you have to excuse me, I
If
believe
you
it's
were
273.
if you were bringing the line up to 108 on its existing property.
No, it would remain, you have to excuse me.
In the buffer still.
You go through, there's a small isolated wetland right here.
I know, but the lot line is above all that.
No.
It would not be, if we were to tie in directly to Route 108, it would not, excuse me, tie into the sewer main under Route 108.
Yeah, the
We would be disturbing wetland and/or the buffer, but we would not be crossing another property.
Right, but it would be, you have to disturb the wetland as opposed to the buffer.
That is correct. I do believe it would be disturbing wetland as well, but I'm not certain of that.
Go through the driveway?
Yeah, logically, either down the middle of the driveway or off to the south side. The bottom of the drawing that you're looking at.
Yeah.
That area is all disturbed already though, right, where you're tying in?
I'm sorry?
Where you're tying in now is grass, lawn, where you propose to tie in?
Oh, the entire area for that new force main is all grass,
Yeah.
with the exception of the northwest corner of the house where it's just not grass.
Yeah, where the old leach field was, is that what you're talking about?
No, we're actually, the leach field was actually to the south, we're southwest, and we're heading north essentially.
But do you already have a shoreline permit, or are you required to have one?
I already have a permit by notification from the state.
Oh, yeah, because you're in failure now with the current septic? The current septic is in failure?
Yes. Or, I wouldn't say it's in failure. The leach field is stressed and deemed to be replaced and facilitate that septic some way, somehow.
Any other questions for
Is there any
the applicant?
concern for capacity on that green main from 4.5?
So in
Because
your
you're tying
packets,
in more.
Not per the PE.
Okay. So there's not any concern for future, that's what I'm kind of getting at, where you'd have to.
yeah, the Director of Environmental Services, Sean, he reviewed the calculations and everything, and he says it's, you have an email here saying it's good.
Yeah.
And the calculations are provided too.
Yeah, I assume that, I haven't had a septic tank replaced myself, but I assume that disturbance of replacing that leach field for a failing one is probably on par with going through this other area that is not in the wetland. So as far as environmental impact, it's probably better than digging a bunch of stuff in the wetland area.
Yeah, and the tying into the sewer is much better for the environment than having a septic system.
Yeah.
Right along the river
Especially on the river.
especially.
Especially, yeah.
I think it's overall a good solution to a problem, right? I mean, clearly.
Absolutely.
My only concern would just be future concerns that you might have personally with a shared sewer line going out to 108, future sales of the property, easements that might need to be put in place at the time of sale or even drafted now that you have a current survey. Plan to be used later
So,
or something? Yeah, but that's none of our concern really.
yeah, so the, one of the conditions from the
Hold on, Bart, I'm going to give it to you in a minute.
Okay, go ahead.
Any other questions from planning board members for the applicant?
Maybe nothing, yeah.
Okay, for the applicant. Okay, Bart, comments?
I just
Or
referred to the
recommendations?
letter from Mr. Gregg for his go-ahead approval. So as you look at, as we continue to review this application, that's the answer to your question, Jeff, about what you just had asked. So, and that's all I have to say.
So, Greg would want a condition that if the properties are no longer under the same ownership, and they are specifically under the same ownership, they're not in different entities?
No, same ownership.
Right. So his recommendation is a condition on approval be to require the installation of its own sewer service. So we can discuss that. Art, you had other comments?
Yes, relative to the plan, I think this is from a site plan perspective, stuff from the top. Just some more information on type of vegetation that's going to be replacing. I assume grass, but just, being clarified. What's going to replace the disturbed buffer area. Also, just an erosion control plan. Or at least some general notes describing what you're going to do. And the same thing for the trenching plan or the construction plan. What's the process? What are you going to do? Where are you going to put the excavated soil? How's it going to be controlled for sediment? Or prevent the sediment from eroding if we have any storm events. Those are my major concerns from a site plan perspective. And from a special use permit, I'm not sure if you want to go there yet. We can wait. So not sure how you want to handle it, Val.
Oh, as appropriate, because it's both. So Bart, you have conditions precedent, 1 and 2 on your report, and then subsequent, which you kind of just
Go through that? Yeah.
review.
Yep, so
Okay.
first one is
But
references what...
the special use permit is for the impact of the buffer, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So this is what, why we're here.
Yeah.
Part of this, yeah. Anyways. Number 1, condition precedent, references what I just explained. It's just those site plan sequencings that should be added, along with a couple administrative items such as a planning board, signature block, etc.
And that's just required under the ordinance?
Yeah, exactly. It's just cleanup. The second one is just to confirm that everything is reflects the planning board's decision if it were to be approved, and also reflects all the conditions and the updates that the site plan needs to require. As we move on to conditions subsequent, before the commencement of construction, have a pre-construction meeting, make sure that the schedule is updated. If there's any changes, make sure that's reflected. Make sure that erosion control measures are installed and then appropriate flagging for wetland buffer is there, just so contractors make sure they're not going further into the buffer than needed. We have a pre-construction meeting and making sure all state approvals are in hand prior to construction. And then for certificate of occupancy, the only two conditions, I shouldn't have got to, I'll change that. As-built plan, so I'll kind of reference Jeff's point. We want to make sure we know where it is, how it was built for our records. So that'll be required for occupancy, and then also the new system development charges paid for wastewater connection fee.
Is the house currently not occupied?
It's occupied, it's being pumped.
8 North Main Street or 4
Okay, so I just,
Both houses are occupied.
yeah, I failed to see how a CO would be issued.
For the work. So any building permit that's pulled or anything required, yeah.
You would call that a
Yeah,
CO?
yeah.
Okay.
And then for the general, a general condition, references Mr. Gregg's condition that if the property were to change ownership, that a new connection from 8 North Main, would have its own separate connection into the system.
Okay.
How is that ever gonna be enforced?
Deed restriction.
Yeah.
Have to
Good.
file that.
Yeah, but that's not what we're saying.
We can amend that.
I don't understand how we would force that.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
She just said a deed restriction, make them put a deed restriction on the current deed.
We could just file a notice.
Yeah, but,
It would run with the land.
no, I understand how that
Right.
works, but it's a strange burden to approve something that we think is incorrect and then force it to be fixed at a later date. To go through the cost of that and then say, no, later, you have to disturb 108.
Right, and I don't understand why we care.
You know, like, I think if we're gonna ask someone to do it, would we not do it now instead of forcing it on the next? I think it might hinder a sale in the future to say, no, you have to go to the state of New Hampshire and ask to dig up 108 just so I can sell you this piece of property.
Let's keep questions so we can get public, I can open up the public here, comments, and then we'll come back and deliberate. Any other questions for Bart on his recommendations right now? Just questions? Okay. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak to the application? Okay, so I'll close the public comments. All right. So Jeff, you bring up a good point. I don't have an issue with the condition because it's under the same ownership.
No, I understand why it should be allowed.
So he's putting the hardship on himself by not connecting in at this point in time.
But he can't connect them, and he could try to sell it, and he may not be able to ever connect them. Well, not ever, but the state doesn't want to wait to go.
What does it mean the state doesn't want the applicant to do that? Like the state has forbidden it, or the state has said it's...
I don't believe he's have you filed a permit with the state to dig up one?
No, I have not. I have been told, 3 years ago, I wanted to, I was not given a curb stop for the water line on my property when I did the renovation of Route 108 on my property. And therefore, I wanted to do so. And that would require me digging into Route 108. The state told me unconditionally that they would not permit it. I reached out regarding this topic, and again, they do not want me to tie into they don't want me to disturb Route 108.
And see,
So what if you put that restriction on and then the same thing is he's decided he wants to sell it or...
Right, it would become a hardship.
but my question is, why do we care? Why are we asking them to separate? The town runs the sewer department. This is a private connection to the town's sewer service. The sewer's getting there. Why do we care who owns the properties and whatever? It doesn't change our position.
Moody Point has 100 homes on one force main.
Right.
I could see, just for example, the green line between the interconnection and 108 failing, and one landowner saying, I'm not going to pay to fix that, and the other landowner saying, well, I don't want to pay for the whole thing. They have two people arguing over who's going to fix this broken main while it's dumping sewage into the wetland that feeds into the Lambert Lake.
Isn't that-
Day, right? And
So-
that it could happen, and maybe Sean's trying to alleviate the town from dealing with that burden potentially.
Is that no different than we have like right-of-ways when people share like driveways and other stuff where there's like, it's just part of the sale that there's an agreement entered into that this is, you have a certain right-of-way or access to something on that property. And if they don't like that, then they go to small claims court, figure it out.
Yeah, I think the difference is in this case, the neglect, in that case, would have an environmental impact, whereas the driveway might be a little different. The driveways are not non-impactful.
Sure.
But
So
Well,
are you looking for a shared maintenance agreement if the property ever sold?
that's what I'm saying, there would need to be an easement for the portion probably that services one lot, and then a shared maintenance of the rest of it, right?
I think that's the burden on the landowner.
Yeah, if I may, there's no way that I can speak for Sean Gray. However, I can tell you what I've been told. When this first came up, he indicated that he did not like easements. At the same time, there is an ordinance, town ordinance for the sewer department, that any property within 30 feet, any property within 100 feet of the sewer main must tie into the sewer main. However, the state, not that it matters at this point in time, the state recommendation is any dwelling within 100 feet. But of course, towns are able to adopt what they want, and Newmarket adopted 100 feet to the boundary line. So I believe that he is hanging his feelings on that requirement, and why after the fact I really can't say. There is a caveat in his email, or previous emails, that if the two properties were sold to a single buyer, that requirement should be waived.
Right, because it's not separate ownership.
It's not separate ownership, and an easement would then not be required.
Which was Hart's recommendation.
I just think back to that thing, trying to say if you sell it, you have to do it, I think is difficult.
I think if you're going to force the landowner to do it, you do it now, at the time that it's collected.
Or set up a maintenance agreement or something to make it happen, or to make sure it's taken care of. 'Cause, Jeff, you said, to me, the only thing that the town would have any interest in is if this thing fails and he's causing a problem environmentally. All you need for that is a maintenance agreement.
I can tell you that if that requirement by the sewer and, the environmental services department, if that requirement was rescinded, I would most certainly have a very stringent and clear easement developed. But at this point in time, the email speaks for itself, but if that were to change, I naturally would get a very clear easement done if one of the properties were sold to a single buyer.
I don't understand how the state can not allow someone to connect to a sewer line. If it's a town sewer, it's a landowner in the town. How the state can deny access.
Oh, they absolutely can.
They can.
Just like they can deny a driveway permit.
So if somebody built 5 new houses down there and wanted to connect, or an apartment building, they could deny connection to the town sewer.
They might make you bore under the road as opposed to disturbing it. Like Rick would make you bore under the road to get into a water main if he doesn't want a new road disturbed.
You can't. Yeah, I guess if they were to bore directly into a manhole. You couldn't tie in a little midline, like most sewer connections are midline for private. They're between the manholes.
Right.
But you can't bore into that. Right.
Is your force main going into a manhole on the other side of 108?
No, you're referring to the
current
existing one?
The existing one.
No, the sewer main is on the far east side of Route 108. But it's connected, it was connected to the prior sewer main, and it was reconnected to the current sewer main with the construction that occurred.
And it's just always been the force main.
It's, since, I found information on that, and it was developed in 1999.
I would say in my old house, I had a similar main where there was a force main across my property, and there was an easement that I wasn't even aware of. When I went to sell the house, the title company found the easement, and I had to find some documentation where that easement was, and I had to come up with something on that easement. But it is important that when you come to sell a home,
You said both properties are occupied right now.
Yes, they are.
How long do you think this would take if you could get going?
I'm sorry, how long it would,
The construction.
oh, I think it's just a matter of days.
Yeah.
Overall.
I agree.
I met with one prospective contractor today who indicated that 8 North would be out of use of septic for just one day, daytime. And they suspected that they would have everything complete in 2 days after that. But that's only one comment from one contractor, potential contractor.
And the permit by notification is 10 days?
No, I have it.
Oh, you already have that?
Secured.
Okay.
And that's what the contractor said is reasonable. That's not a very
Yeah.
difficult job. I just have I just have a problem demanding this homeowner, this property owner do something that they may not be able to do. Because the state could still say no. If this was for convenience and they didn't want to go up here, just because they didn't want to, I would understand that, but
Well,
the state could still say no.
How about,
look at
And
the
then what
other.
do they do?
Let's look at it from a different perspective. If these were currently owned by two different people, in the property that, I won't use the term failed leach field, but that you're trying to connect to, right, the town, municipal system, we could be having the same conversation, and these two owners could be together and say, can I connect into your force main through an easement? We wouldn't even be involved with that, other than why Mr. Phelps is here tonight, which is the special use permit for the, for the buffer.
The only town's interest I see in this whole thing is, like Jeff said, is if it fails. As long as there's a maintenance agreement in place, that should satisfy everything.
Is the existing line inspected that runs from the northerly house to the 108?
I don't know what occurred in 1999. I have some paperwork on that, but it hasn't failed and it's been working fine.
I also think relative to the regulation, we're here to hear, the applicant is seeking approval to basically impact the wetland buffer in making a case that that is the least impact, which is one of the conditions, correct? There's no other less impact area or option, right? So having this particular lot connect in, the state's all for it, you're still going to have a bigger impact, I would believe, other than if you're putting it up to the driveway? The existing driveway? Is that the only part that's outside?
It runs right here.
Maybe Barb can open that up.
It still runs through the buffer.
You're still running all through the buffer.
Right.
I think,
Right. And there's a wetland right here.
and there's a wetland.
So you might have some actually wetland impacts there.
Right.
So I think coming up through the lot is more impact to the wetlands.
I would agree. And that's what our discussion is here.
Well, that's why I asked about the existing line from the northerly property to Main Street, because most of that line is within the wetland. Not within, I believe it's within a
I think-
wetland and not even within a buffer.
Yeah.
I agree it is.
So that's why I was like,
Right.
that's why I was curious if it, because you're doubling the capacity and use of it, if it's, I don't know what it's made out of, if it's, that's why I asked if they inspected it, like ran a camera on it or something. I mean, you're completely right. That's what we're here to assess.
We're here to discuss.
The impact on the
Yeah.
wetland. But we have a
Has he
letter.
made the case
Right, we have a letter from-
for us to grant this relief?
That's-
No, I agree. And I think they've made the case that this is the best alternative.
Is there an ordinance that says this building must have its own connection? I just was wondering why the sewer department, is it because we're adding another service to the town sewer, which is an impact. But that's not up to us, it's up to Sean to say we can or we can't, right? Our sewer main can handle
Because
the additional flow.
Because the septic system is in what we consider a state of failure, they have to tie in, and they are in close proximity to the sewer line on 108 by the property line. They are forced to tie in.
But you're right,
the
that's
sewer.
Sean's decision.
Yeah.
We have nothing to do with whether they can tie in or not.
Right.
We're just
looking.
taking his thoughts into consideration.
Yeah, exactly.
Future.
Right.
Do we have to ask the, because there's a wetland buffer impact, do we have to ask the planning board for, the Conservation Commission for a comment?
No, not in this case. I'll bring up the ordinance. That's when, well, I'll bring it up.
Because this is a utility crossing.
Correct.
So the impact isn't.
No, it's, I'll show you the ordinance you're referring to, Jeff. You just don't know it verbatim?
Yeah, I don't remember if You don't have to bring it to me, Barb, do you?
Mr. Phelps, do you have any other
Doing it.
issues with the conditions precedent or subsequent, or any questions regarding the planner's recommendation?
I do, thank you. I didn't, perhaps it's because I need new glasses, or I didn't read in the document the requirement,
This one.
but nonetheless, pre-construction meeting. Or when would that, how soon before construction, and who would I have to, or who would I need to contact?
Yep, typically it'd be, I could help organize that. I'd suggest contacting me, then I can probably get Sean there. And then anyone, he'd probably be the only other person, would be me, Sean. And if there's any detail, I don't think we need detail or anything, but the idea is just to go over the decision and the plan, and just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So the contractor, Mr. Evans, code enforcement officer, he'd be there as well. And just make sure that everyone understands what's going to happen and what the checkpoints are, and when do phone calls need to be made when you complete a task.
This is, does this mirror Sean's comment via email to contact his office 24 or 48 hours ahead of time?
Yeah, so I would suggest that when you're planning on installation or starting to, then you contact him, and then what I would suggest is give us an email and CC all of us on it.
Okay.
That'd be the best approach.
Would,
Just to be clear, I think
If it were to be
he was
approved.
asking a different question. So your recommendation is a pre-construction meeting. Sean's email is relative to inspection, what I read as, inspection with at least 24-hour notice, inspection when it's done,
So part of that,
before you
yeah.
backfill.
Right, but yeah, so, correct. But that'd be a good point to iterate when check-ins need to happen. So that's the purpose of the pre-construction meeting.
okay. And 48 hours in advance, contact you?
Yes.
For the meeting portion?
For the meeting, yes.
For the meeting portion.
That's sufficient amount of time.
And just to cross T's, so to speak, with the understanding or the assumption that nothing has changed, nothing that's deviated from the plans, is there anything that could occur during the pre-construction meeting that would delay construction? I ask that only because the contractor is going to have a set date that they're looking to start, and if we're having that meeting, I would just like to have the assurity that unless something has changed, that would not be delayed.
Right, so if nothing's changed on the plan that was approved by the planning board, nothing should.
Okay, great. And
But you should have erosion control plan.
That'd be part of the plan. So if it were to be approved, so one of my recommendations is the erosion control measures. So I think,
That should be installed prior to the meeting.
right, and then that's listed here.
Yes.
Yeah.
if I can, regarding that, I did see that, it sounded like, or it read as if you wanted to update plans. But with that, before speaking, Bart, maybe let me share that my request for proposal that went out to the potential contractors highlights several things that are within or labeled to be addressed here as concerns or things to be confirmed. One of which is regarding the erosion or silt prevention. It's indicated right on their proposal that they're to follow the permit by notification requirements. And each contractor is also to sign the RFP, making it part of the construction document package, if you will. So I think I've rolled that in well with their requirements to follow again, the erosion and silt control, prior to construction, because that's directly a part of the PBM that I have.
Sure. Not to get too much in the weeds.
That's the
Yeah.
state.
Well, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
is that sufficient? So,
I think, what would be, and typically what we see from a planning board site plan is some kind of demarcation of where those erosion control measures are to be installed. So, and also where the excavated soil is to be stored when you're going through this. And what measures are you implementing to ensure that that soil, if it were to rain, will stay in place?
to the latter point, within, again, their RFP or ITB, if you will, that again, they are required to sign, at one paragraph, it states, contractors shall remove any excess cut fill and other materials to restore the properties to their previous condition, less the requirements for work being performed toward that project objective. I guess what I'm asking is, and I have a copy for you if you'd like, given that this document and that further clarification about erosion control, the removal of fill and such, is that enough so that I don't have to go back to TF Moran to ask them to update the drawings? And I ask that because I no longer have AutoCAD, and I would just rather avoid that expense if possible. Would you like a copy of it?
Eric.
My position is no, that's not enough, because that agreement is between you and the contractor. The town's not party to that, so if you and your contractor get into a pissing contest, somebody can say, it doesn't show on the plan. Having said that, I don't know if you necessarily have to go back to TF Moran, as long as you give us a document that says what your erosion control is gonna be.
Okay.
Right, you're gonna use silt fence, 10 feet off where the force main is, whatever you're gonna do, if you give us a document that says that, at least we have something that we can enforce on what's gonna happen.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I would agree. I think that just that the, whether it's, whether it's you, Bart, as the town planner, or the code enforcement officer, if the applicant is just bringing a marked up plan as to, where the erosion control measures would be, implemented, what they'll be, and then where the actual, dug material is stored while the work is going on.
I know,
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, it's gonna,
I don't
They're gonna
think
put
you need
silt
an
fence.
engineered plan of that.
I agree. It can be just a one-page document that says the silt fence is gonna be 10 feet off of the,
And the wetland's
Force
already
main.
been marked, correct? From, we have a letter here from
yeah.
from Mark Jacobs.
Mark Jacobs. Yeah.
So he's already delineated the wetlands, correct?
Did he flag it, Jim?
Did not flag it at that time well, again, it's cut grass.
Yeah. I think,
So how did TF Marine pick up, how did they get it on their plan if he didn't flag the wetland?
TF Moran did a survey of my properties back in 2019, and that plan, that's the boilerplate of this plan that you see. So they already had the information concerning the wetlands and where they occurred within that drawing via AutoCAD. Mark Jacobs simply verified that those wetland areas and the associated buffer was still intact.
Okay.
so my suggestion, this is where my concerns come, is just, especially as you get closer and closer to the wetland, is making sure those erosion control measures are in place. Preventing any type of particulars encroaching into the wetland. So I think we can be reasonable and you have everything flagged. And, you show us, this is, why a pre-construction meeting is even more important in this case. Show us where that soil is going to be stored as you are excavating. And so that gives us insurance that you are controlling, any type of migration of soil as you are installing the infrastructure.
For my education, well, I know what is usually done in trenching. They scoop out the soil and they put it off to the side and they use what they need to refill once they run their pipe. Is there another requirement other than that? Other than removing the excess, which I understand.
I think
No, that's appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
typically what you do is you put your silt fence up, excavate the trench,
Right.
put the fill next to the trench, the excavation, put your pipe in, backfill. Now, you gotta leave it open for however long it takes until Sean can inspect or
Yeah.
whatever. But no, that's appropriate. Now, if you can't fit the excavate in there, you've gotta put it, you gotta load it right into a dump truck and take it offsite or something.
There is gonna
But it's
be-
only 4 feet deep, so it's not gonna be a
Well,
lot of-
there is going to have excess because they're putting down sand and or, crushed gravel.
Right.
To bed the new
Yes.
force main.
Yep.
So there is going to be material left over, but of course they won't know how much that is until after it's inspected and after they backfill.
Right.
So again, that soil is going to be standing there. So we want to make sure that it doesn't go away, stays in place wherever that you propose to put it. That's why it's important for us to understand where you're going to do that. As Eric said, logically it's typically next to the trench, but, I think, like I said, as you get closer to that wetland, it becomes more of a concern. That's storage.
Yeah, like the materials won't be stored within
Yeah.
the buffer,
Right.
that there's still fence to protect the wetland and the buffer from any erosion. If it's 2 days and we get a thunderstorm, it
I understand.
washes the slope.
And again, my opinion, that doesn't need to be a plan, that just needs to be a Word document.
Good.
And then
That's
we can-
my opinion. So-
And then if the erosion control's in place prior to excavation and inspected by the code enforcement officer, then I'd say this looks great.
Yeah, I would say that the erosion control is gonna be in before you do your pre-construction meeting. And everybody can look at it and say, all right, this looks good, everybody understands what's going on.
I mean, Bart, the only one thing I would argue is that if the Lamprey River is truly as shown on the plan, I think it's within 150 feet of the, I just don't want to get the Conservation Commission upset at us for not getting their input. Because they're showing a 100-foot buffer from the Lamprey River there. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it looks like. Because the prime wetland, I believe, is the edge of the Lamprey River. And they're showing that intersect the regular 25-foot wetland buffer.
Right, so I
just
think
right
as
at the-
it goes up, it's not Lamprey River. The Lamprey River's behind the,
It's the flowage.
It's
Part of the river. I would think the flowage would be part of the river, but
no, and this will go to our next discussion too, so, but I think it's
That's the
here.
Shotmeyer Park next to it.
I think it,
no, on the other, on this, so like right here, where it's called
Oh.
Lamprey River up into this
I
cove.
see, yes,
This is
yes.
probably flowage of the river.
Right.
And then if you see the setback line that comes really close to the house,
Right.
really close to the interconnection.
That's the 100-foot.
That's the 100-foot prime wetland, and I believe the prime wetland would be the edge of the river in there.
Yeah, but then he's not impacting that.
Nobody's impacting buffer, the buffer impact is within 150 feet of the Lamprey River, which the ordinance part that Bart pointed out, so you don't need it seems to say you do not need input from the Conservation Commission unless the wetland is not within 150 feet of Great Bay, Lamprey River, Piscassic, or Clarence. So the impact, the buffer is within 150 feet of what they're showing on the plan to be the Lamprey River. So, I mean, I'm sure the comments would be very similar to what we have for. Does that make sense?
So you're saying under the ordinance, the applicant would have to receive, oh, wait, no, the planning board's supposed to get the comments from the commission.
It does say wetland buffer.
This has not been sent to the Conservation Commission, correct, Bart?
Correct.
It's,
Do you concur, Bart, with the ordinance? As Jeff is interpreting it?
Well, yeah, so the question is the prime, is the edge of the prime wetlands the edge of the river? Or is it a river,
Well, we got an
then a
update.
wetlands?
Well, it's on the plan.
it's on the plan, yeah.
Yeah, but that, so they're saying that's 100 feet?
Yeah, but it's
That's what it looks
150
like.
under the ordinance.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
looks like 100, so the impact is within 100, I'm using the buffer to measure 150 feet.
Right. In the current,
Right.
It's probably.
current ordinance is requiring the planning board to receive comments.
See that 100, the text there, 100-foot prime wetland setback buffer?
Yeah, and it's within
Yeah,
that
so
dash
if you go to
line
150,
up in the
And so it's
corner.
probably like 115 or 110 from what they're calling the
well,
river
it's
on
certainly
the plan.
within the 150.
Yeah. Whether or not that's like the river, I guess, is what Bart was saying. If it's flowage from the dam, you would think it would be considered like the river.
Technically, it's an impoundment and not the river.
That's, well, I don't know if there's a distinction that I would have to. And I'm supportive of doing this. I'm not against it. I just don't want to alienate a board that might look back at it and say, geez. I would be
Well-
required to ask them for it.
I think more the question is, could our
Marquest.
decision be appealed?
Marquest.
I don't have a
Do you have
problem
Which one?
making this
The
decision.
wetland.
Is the Conservation Commission going to appeal
Do you
it?
have that?
Oh, yeah.
Or in a butter?
No, it's not.
But the green is already in there.
Well, you're also
Right,
balancing.
given the situation.
You are, but you're balancing, when's the next Concom meeting?
2 days.
But
Thursday.
is there a submittal deadline that they've already missed?
Probably.
Right, so, and I guess what I'm getting at is balancing,
Instead of 1
we're
week.
talking 2 months to get back here. Is that, that thing, that field could be
Could,
spewing sewage.
So
It's balancing that against the environmental impact.
I'm looking.
Are you actually using the field, or has that been tapped?
I'm pumping out.
You're pumping.
I'm pumping out the existing septic tank on a very regular basis.
So it's more of a cost hardship, because nothing's going into the leach field, correct?
That's correct. It's being pumped
Yeah, it's being
out
pumped. Yeah.
every 2 weeks.
One way to get around that issue with water is go down the driveway of 8, go down Street and connect them in green, close to 108.
Well, you're going through a different property then, right?
But then you're through,
No, same thing.
No, there's,
you're through the wetland,
I think that wetland comes up to looks like it comes up to the corner of that lot.
and
So
goes
you'd
all
be-
behind the
might actually be
house.
in the
You
wetland.
could get in just inside of 108. I just bring it. You see how
Yeah, but if you're concerned about it, the green line is clearly within that buffer zone too, right?
It's existing.
Yeah,
the
okay, but
existing
still.
Yeah.
I think the discussion here is the planning board requiring is the planning board,
Required.
Right. I think this discussion is the planning board going to take any action before we hear from the planning board, from the Conservation Commission as required under the ordinance?
I mean, I know the Conservation Commission is going to be supported based on discussions about the park and the park's usage. They're going to be supportive of fixing this issue, 100% supportive of the solution. I don't think they're going to get tied up. Personally, I can't speak for them, but I don't think they're going to get tied up in the, is it going to connect right? How come you can't go under one? I don't think they'll get tied up in that. And I think they'll see the impact as minimal and worth it. But
Well, is that worth a condition of approval then? Conditionally approve it, subject to
But
agreeing
it's-
to respond to any comments from the
Can I-
Conservation Commission?
Is it something
But-
I can just bring up randomly at a meeting and not notice?
But the ordinance is that the Conservation Commission is giving comments to the planning board.
So the Concom can draft comments tomorrow night in the meeting and supply them to Bart Friday.
So you could do a, you,
But does it need
someone
to be-
could do a motion that, you know, subject to,
But does it need to be noticed that we're going to talk about it?
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
don't know the answer.
It doesn't say how, it just says
I think we would just have to be considering them.
upon
Some
consultation with the Conservation Commission.
Because this is the public forum to have that considered.
Yeah, so this application, when it came in, I believe should have gone to the Conservation Commission,
That's
is
what
what
I
you're
think.
saying. They would have had 21 days to comment.
Right, but is there any harm in us conditionally approving it subject to incorporating any comments the Conservation Commission may have?
It negates the ordinance, because the idea is we're deliberating on whether or not to
This says
grant
other dredge
approval.
fills or impacts.
What do you say?
I'm just reading the, so this one talks about utility crossings, and this one talks about other dredge fills or other impacts. So other dredge fills or impacts for development and any crossing impact in excess of requirements of section E4 up here.
Right, yeah, it's definitely less than
So
that.
I don't think it's applicable,
Except the fact that it's within 150 feet.
but it says, so this is the enabling, so we read this contextually, it said, other dredges, fills, or impacts for development and any other crossing impacts in excess of
Right, but
4, right here. So of 6,000 square feet for poorly drained soils and 12,000.
But it says, if you keep reading, you gotta read that, deny or approve with conditions or special use permit upon determination of compliance with the following criteria. The wetland is not within 150 feet of.
Maybe preliminary dredges for the may prove.
Yeah,
But
item
it's
one
in
is,
excess of the requirements.
Yeah, so I
Right, so Bart is saying that this is not in excess of the requirements.
It's not, but
right,
if it's not in compliance with the rest, that's why the rest is there. If it's within 150 feet, it doesn't matter if it's 6,000 square feet or 500 square feet. Because it's within 150 feet of.
right. I agree with you, Jeff. That's what,
Unless-
that's the way the regulation's written, yeah.
Yeah, unless
I
G
see that.
supersedes it because of the type of impact.
The impact is, the impact doesn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, but it's, those 1 through 5 override the criteria.
I think only if the crossing impacts in excess of the requirement.
If it's in excess, then isn't that gonna go to the conservation commission?
yeah.
But it's under 6,000 square feet.
Right, but it's within 150 feet. Why else, then why is number 1 there?
When we look at the utility crossing,
Right, well, that's what I said, sorry, unless E, and that,
It's there because it is because it's in excess of the requirement.
Yeah, I agree that it's a utility crossing. I think
Right.
we all agree on that. So you follow section E, right, you go through it. And then if there was any impacts from the driveway or utility crossing that were in excess of 6,000
Right.
feet, in excess of E4, now we have additional criteria to consider. Okay, well, it's in excess of 6,000 feet. Is it also in 150 feet?
Right. I read it the same way. It's not a utility crossing.
If it wasn't,
Or
yeah.
it's more than 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
what does 1 under that? So you're saying, if you.
That's if E4 is exceeded, then you would also consider that.
Yeah, but it doesn't, no.
If it's less than 6,000 feet, we don't care if it's within 150 feet.
No,
It's
you
higher
definitely,
than that.
that's, I think the only way it cannot have a supersede is if it's not considered dredge fill or other impact.
Right, it's a driveway and utility crossing,
Right.
which
but
this
that's-
is.
Yeah, I
If
read
it
F
was
as
something
like a
that
catch-all
wasn't,
that the others didn't apply to.
The other is it's not a driveway or utility crossing.
Right.
So, I think,
Just add it.
I guess, was there anything else
I
that
think
needed to be?
we-
now let me back up. Bart has the authority as to interpret the ordinance, correct? As the planner.
yes, so I can make a recommendation. You know, you're the legislative body, yeah, so it's,
But your opinion is that this application only applies to E
in my
and does
opinion.
not apply to F.
In my opinion, because I think it's a utility crossing, and I think in F, E4 would have to be exceeded in order to trigger the subordinate criteria.
Do we wanna put that on
I understand that this,
record?
but I'm going to poll the planning board. I'm going to poll the planning board. Do people agree this is a utility crossing and it falls under only E and that F does not apply? Phil?
I agree.
Zach?
I agree.
Jeff? Do not? Jane? I agree. We've got a majority, myself. Okay, all right, so that discussion is over. Okay, I think now we're looking to move forward as to, Bart, where are you with the applicant just submitting, prior to pre-approval meeting, providing you information on the construction sequence notes, erosion control notes, and where they would be located?
I'm fine with that on a,
I
as
don't-
a, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't see where the planning board would have to sign the plan. This isn't a site plan for recording. I mean, he'd have to go back to TF Ryan for that or not? Or you can just draw that in?
You have to go back.
Yeah, so, and this isn't
And they
being
don't want to-
recorded.
So I would just,
Right.
just do a waiver then, yeah. On that.
So,
Yeah,
So if that was an additional requirement for me, I didn't quite catch it.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
yeah, okay. Can I have a motion to waive the requirement for the planning board chair to sign the site plan?
Motion for the planning board chair to waive the, motion to waive the requirement that the planning board chair
To sign the site plan.
sign the site plan.
That was a motion?
Yes.
Okay, with a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, okay, so that's removed from Bart's condition precedent. Is the board fine with modifying the recommendation by the planner under number 1 on conditions precedent is that the applicant just provide the following information satisfactory to the town planner? It's going to be Bart, or it will be code enforcement officer?
Do it to me, because it's your, I'm your person that advises the board, so.
Okay. That they would have the following information: construction sequence notes, the erosion control notes, the demarcation, and the landscape replanting notes. So it doesn't have to be on the plan, but you've got to provide that information to the town planner.
Single document, included in the erosion and silt control.
Yeah, whatever's satisfactory to Bart, what he needs to understand that, you know, where the buffers, where are the silt fence going, you know, and where is anything being excavated put to ensure that it's not, you know, within the buffer. You good with that change?
So that's part of the pre-construction meeting? the
Yeah, just
conditions
modifying the
subsequent?
planner's recommendations. I think what we want to do is have a motion to grant approval to the request for the special exception, a special use permit, you know, based, you know, subject to the planner's conditions precedent and conditions subsequent recommendations as amended.
Okay, yeah, just making sure I understood where in that lived.
May I ask something? Because it may affect what you're discussing now. And number one, if okay? Bart, number one, sorry I didn't look at the third page as closely as I should have this afternoon. The pre-construction meeting, is that to be with the contractor as well?
Yes.
Okay. Second, is it okay if, because having them go to a meeting is one thing, having them put up erosion control and silt fences before they ever even get to the job site with their equipment is another. Would it be okay if we outlined where in my letter, but as well as the meeting, to outline where the erosion control is going to be at the pre-construction meeting and invite you or anyone else to see that, in fact, before any earth is moved, you come and see, in fact, that silt fence and erosion control barriers are in place.
Prior to any work, it needs to be up. So if it's, however,
Yeah, that's
so
under,
so we'll have a pre-construction meeting, and then if it's not up by that time, then we would have to come back to make sure that it is up prior to your contractor doing work.
Very good.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's already stated under condition
Yeah.
2. Condition subsequent to the approval.
Right, exactly, and that's what I'm addressing. I'd rather not ask a contractor to mobilize people to put up a fence and/or the erosion control 48 hours prior to coming on to perform work. If someone would be willing to come and see that when they do come to perform work, but once the fence is up and before any land is moved, that the erosion and silt controls are in place.
Two different things. One, you need to tell, what Sean is requiring is inspections. What I'm requiring, or would be requiring, is that we have a pre-construction meeting before you do any work, and then once prior to doing any of that work, you would have to have your erosion control measures up.
Prior to doing the work.
Prior to starting the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so item 2 could be reworded just a bit to clarify that. I'm not asking for anybody to do anything. I just want to be sure that I'm on the same page and that I don't have to incur any unnecessary additional expenses if we can still meet the objective and your concerns.
So it's prior to start of construction.
Yes.
I would say the proposed location of the silt fence is in place prior to the meeting, and then the silt fence itself is in place prior to
That's
construction.
what number 2
Right,
says in
that's
subsequent,
yeah,
right?
we already amended that.
That's not what that says. It says all the erosion control shall be in place.
No,
So-
for conditions
Prior to
precedent.
construction.
So number
Okay,
one,
all right.
But what he has to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
to Bart
yeah,
is
okay.
like, this is what I'm gonna
Yeah,
do, here it
yeah.
is, where this is all gonna go. Bart
Yeah.
says, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
But before he
so-
puts a shovel in the ground, it's
So-
actually installed.
I understand it, and just to say it out loud, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of back and forth. So under condition subsequent, number 1, so prior to construction, prior to the pre-construction meeting, applicant shall submit an updated construction schedule, construction sequence, landscaping notes, and erosion control plan. Right, we want all that provided to Bart for the pre-construction meeting. And then prior to construction, all erosion control measures must be installed.
Right.
With flagging, so it's the
That's what
planning and the actual, that's how that should read.
Thank you.
Bart, wouldn't you want the items in 4 prior to the pre-construction meeting?
I guess typically, yeah, but that one's to provide more flexibility, if we needed to meet, so, yeah, we can take 4 and then put it to 1, and then that would satisfy everything.
and then 3 becomes 2. Oh, sorry.
3 stays
1
3.
becomes 2, 3 stays 3, and then 2 becomes 4. Does that make sense?
1 stays the same. There's only 4 is dissolved and merges with 1, right?
Yep. It'll be part of what is being submitted. and-
Correct.
Yeah, I don't read that as a sequence of,
Okay.
like, we do 1, then do 2. It's
Right.
just
Yeah,
a list of
okay.
things that need to
Yeah,
happen.
they just all have to be done.
Okay.
And then where are people at with this issue of directly connecting in? You know, that is going to be the general condition, the special use permit?
I'm in favor of just, as the plan shows, connecting into the force main along 4.5 property line, as shown.
But as far as in the instance of the 2 properties no longer being owned by the same entity, having to, the 8 North Main has to require.
I would say I wait, then, I know we went back and forth, I would probably err on the side of that's not in the planning board's purview. If the sale occurred, they would have to
I would
establish
agree.
the relationship with that as part of the sale agreement. As far as our scope, it's just property owner wants to do this, they achieve all the, with amendments, necessary actions.
I agree.
Same? Okay. So that would be removed. Any further discussion on the recommendation of the planner as we've amended them? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
Yeah, since I've been the motioner all night, motion to approve the special use permit as amended.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. You can go to the next step with the information you need to get to Bart.
Okay, just to clarify, some of the items, what is being referred to as condition precedent items, items 1 through 4 have been rearranged to some degree as we've discussed. Item 1 under general conditions of the special use permit is going to be removed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any other items that Bart is looking for? I'm prepared to address now, but I'm gathering that that's to be addressed later and perhaps in that letter.
Yeah, what you'll need to give to Bart is the, doesn't have to be on the plan. You just need to give him all of the information relative to the conditions subsequent or in precedent as we've amended it.
Okay. Is there anything else that I should be aware of or to be asking? No? No?
Just be aware that, you know, any approval by the planning board or action is a 30-day appeal process.
Okay.
So any work that you would conduct in that time period is obviously at your own risk.
And will I be receiving I forgot the terminology of that document that Bart developed. Will I be receiving the revised version?
Yes, so you'll be receiving notice of decision that will have findings of fact and also the conditions of approval as amended. Okay. And then also a explaining the appeal period. And, you know, if you so disagree with this decision, you know, giving you, showing you the way to appeal. So that'll be included in your letter that you guys do.
Timeline to get you the document about erosion control, landscaping and such.
I would prefer, we can discuss this online. Offline. That'd be fine.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda, our planning board rules of procedure.
Excuse me, I feel compelled to let although you folks probably don't need to know, Bart has been very generous with his time. I've tried to take as very little of it as possible, but he's given me the time needed to get the application in to you folks as currently it has appropriately been done.
Well, thank you for recognizing him. We love our town planner.
Oh, guys, on the record. Thanks, Jim.
Good. Rules of procedure. Bart, do you want to go through this? You want us to just take this and
Yeah, I just think it's just a good refresher.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely
think we'd spend
update
too
it.
much time on it if you want. But if, maybe at the next meeting,
cool.
if you want to go through it now or just.
No, let's
just
take
review
this,
it.
review it prior to the next meeting.
Yeah.
If you have any comments on it or suggestions, get those to Bart, and then he can do some updating.
Yep.
And then if you could just get the updated version to us prior to the next meeting.
Right.
And then we can take action. And I'll just point out, I think the only amendment we made in 2018 is when the statute changed to 21 days. I don't think we call any other amendments. Yeah, so this is very good. Okay, thank you. Next, discussion relative to prime wetlands and our next steps to update the existing maps. And Bart, can you explain how the planning board's involved with this?
Yeah, so the planning board's involved through a ordinance amendment. So typically, how recently, we, so in chapter 155, just kind of, we identified prime wetlands and prime wetland maps. It was done last, I think, geez, when Mark do it, early 2000s. I don't say 2004. It might have been established before then, but last updated. And basically that helps us identify where in town those prime wetlands are, where we want to protect. We have recently got a grant to update that. Mark has a report right here that uses LiDAR and field truthing, ground truthing, to see if the prime wetlands that have been identified have expanded or contracted. And that's all in here. Why we're here today with this is to, one,
Excuse me,
consider.
Bart, just for people at home, can you just throw up maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just the prime wetland map.
Yeah, I'll get the proposed one. Sorry, it's a large document. I'll just bring up one. While this loads, from a procedural standpoint, the plan board usually looks at any zoning change first and makes a recommendation to town council. In that process, the plan board can hold a public hearing or defer not to. This is kind of overload where our prime wetlands are. So you can see here, these are where they are located. And Mark West from Mark West Environmental used LiDAR and ground truthing, like I said, to measure how these prime wetlands have changed over time. You know, have they grown and have they contracted at all? The long and the short, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just trying to see what the total acreage is. Is it 80 acres? Sorry, thanks, Bill. Didn't have it in front of me. 81.9 acres.
Yeah, additional.
Yeah, some. Some of the wetlands have contracted, but most of them have grown. So.
I think that's on the next slide, Mark.
Yeah. So this kind of shows, you know, how the process, what Mark do. The red lines are the existing boundary and the blue lines are the revised. So this looks like somewhere in the lamprey. Oh, no, it looks like the dam right there, so. Yeah, thanks, Bill. This looks like Lady Slipper, right there.
One comment I had, he goes away from showing both lines later on in the report. Existing.
Yeah, and proposed, yeah. Well,
That stays later.
can you say that one time, sir?
It'd be nice if you show that as it goes through each of the individuals later.
Okay. Yeah. I can have him update the report.
I mean, we might have other comments.
Yeah. So I think what would be really helpful, my suggestion is we got to do a couple things procedurally, either planning board or town council ultimately, but we have to notify abutters that are affected by this change, which we plan on doing. Also, I think it would be great to bring Mark in to go over this report. And what was helpful at the Conservation Commission, because he did come and present this to them, is how to measure the extent of the prime wetland in reality based on maps. So instead of just looking at the map, transposing that wetland delineation onto a site plan, what he suggests, at least at the Conservation Commission, is you're actually going to use the LiDAR too. So you're using both information, what's the LiDAR saying, and then what's on the map, and then kind of interpolating from there, and find that edge of wetland in order to understand what the actual buffer would be. So I know there was, I know Jeff's brought this a few times, there's been different interpretations on how to measure or identify where that edge of wetland is. So I think it'd be really great for him to come in to kind of give us more of a tutorial on, how we should approach, or how the board should approach these. So if that's, if the board finds that useful and interesting, I think I would recommend to invite him here and give a presentation. I don't know, Jeff, you want to?
On the ground.
What's that?
I believe he said as delineated on the ground.
As delineated on the ground?
Yeah, at the time of this survey for, a pre-development, within the part of the survey, the prime wetland would be delineated on the ground, not overlaying from
Right.
this map.
Yeah, right. Yeah, anything that we'd see, whether it's
Yeah.
a prime wetland or not, would be delineated by a wetland scientist,
Right, but
which is the most
Has-
accurate way
Right.
of doing that.
It has been presented multiple ways to the planning board in the past.
Why is
They
there all,
accepted both ways.
why is there all the information on Pelham? Town of Pelham.
Yeah, I was gonna put that comment in. I think he accidentally put in half a report's worth of other towns'
Yeah.
wetland maps. I was very confused.
Okay, there you go.
We have new named things in our town.
Would it make sense that so you would be giving notification to any property owners who would be impacted by the change? Is that?
Correct.
Would be the process? And then would you be recommending that notification go out so that the abutters could come to the same meeting that Mark was here? And I think that's a
Yes.
great idea.
I'm good with that.
Is everybody good with that process?
What about folks that are just, there's no change, but they're impacted by the buffer?
Anybody whose property is in a prime wetland?
My approach would be, if they're impacted by the buffer, even if they work currently, they'd
Yeah.
still be notified.
Impacted at all?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
Makes sense?
Because it could have been property change, ownership
Oh,
changes. that
yeah,
don't know
not just the
about it.
prime wetland, but the buffer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be the buffer as well. So wherever the statute, the ordinance says. So I would do 150 feet from the edge, because that's the greatest extent if you were, that has a limitation, or the ordinance puts limitations on. I mean, I'm welcome to suggestions, 200 feet.
No, I think,
150, yeah.
150 is the ordinance.
Yeah.
Your
Right.
property's impacted.
Yeah.
Can you scroll back to the town line?
Townwide, yeah. With the blue polygons? Yeah.
There's very little along the Great Bay, except for that northern corner.
It's pretty hilly.
Yeah.
Much on New Road?
I mean, he could have, I think it has to do with what the town adopted the previous time and actually looked at, right? Because the town, I don't think the town is required, if you were going to adopt an ordinance, to require to assess every single wetland in the town.
These are the ones that were identified as
Right.
the prime wetlands.
Right. I think Mark did that work for us originally, identifying the original prime wetlands.
And purposely exclude tidal wetlands, didn't we?
I can't remember. I went to the state and got the original application because when the current maps that are out, we didn't have like a decent set of maps like 10 years ago or whatever. And so did some research to see what the actual buffers that, when the application was submitted, to make sure the buffers were proper. And the application shows some prime wetlands, or some wetlands that he assessed that weren't accepted as prime wetlands. And I'm not sure the extent, but it's like, it's a.
Well, is
it's a
there
fairly
like,
thick book.
Just wanted a tidal wetland to handle review.
well, is that like a state or
Think so.
county thing that we don't even, it's not Newmarket prime wetlands? Is that a thing?
Probably.
There's a state law that says what can and cannot be a prime wetland, and that's changed over the years multiple times.
'Cause there's a whole estuary that leads right up to NE4. Right?
And I thought that the
RSA.
freshwater,
That's on the other side.
So the
freshwater
depth,
lamprey and freshwater discus below the dam.
Oh, that's all
Or
brackish.
both.
Bill, to answer your question, it's under RSA 482-A:15, and prime wetlands as jurisdictional wetlands that, because of their size, unspoken character, fragile condition, other relevant factors make them substantial and significant. So I'm sure within that RSA, there's other criteria as well.
Because it's a ton of them.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's changed over the years. Like how narrow it can get, things like that.
yeah.
Is the Conservation Commission fine with Mark's work in the
Yeah.
areas that we're going, that we'll be dealing with as prime wetlands?
Yeah, and I think that's why it's here now, right? Because we're like nice work. 'Cause
But the
I think
Conservation
is-
Commission wasn't considering, why aren't the tidal wetlands in? Why aren't the,
We did not discuss that.
Wait, he just looked at the existing ones and remapped them, so he didn't look at like, are there new ones to add or take away? Like, he didn't look at that.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think.
Reassessed.
so
prime
at
wetlands.
this point, this is what's before our board? That has been moved forward to us through the Concom?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I think the next step part would be to notificate, the meeting, notification, getting something set up with Mark.
Yeah, so I'll see when Mark can join us, and then we'll send out a notice.
Yeah, and then I like the adding in existing, and I think that'll help, because some of these are hard to decipher. I think if you add those in, most people say, okay, yeah, so it shrunk by me or encroached by me.
Yeah, we can do like an overlay, to a visual overlay, and then,
And you can overlay the tax maps, correct?
yes, you
So
can.
people can then say, oh,
That-
yeah.
I already
that
been
might
playing around with it, because I have
That
the
might be
shape
helpful
files.
too.
I think these maps are fantastic with like if we had maps like he's got here with the kind of LiDAR bare earth surface with
Yeah.
with the new, just with the new on it even, it lets people kind of interpret their property a little bit. If you're out there, you're like, oh, it's a mountainous hill where it gets really flat.
So
Yeah, I
maybe
think between the LiDAR and the actual real satellite imagery, those two together are very useful.
So Jeff, to your point, and Zach, to your point, we will have our official zoning maps that are, traditional, and then we can have those supplemental maps too. Because you can get that LiDAR data on this Clearinghouse GIS website. Yeah.
Whatever, town, Pelham.
Pelham.
Yeah.
There you
Looks
go.
like it starts on page
What is
45.
All right, we're good on this?
Does it need to be resubmitted by the state or is it just accepted by the town?
The town, it's the zoning ordinance. Yeah. Just for the town.
Because I know we had I know the application originally went to the state, so I didn't know if it was changed.
I'll look into the process and,
I think if we wanted to add new ones, we'd have to go to the state again.
Because we're adopting prime wetlands.
That was the first adoption of prime wetlands, yes.
And now we're amending the
we're
map
amending the map.
based upon existing conditions.
And maybe it doesn't need to be an application, I don't know, if the state needs to be notified, you, or I'm not sure where it goes after. Wasn't sure if it
Okay.
was a further process.
Big item. We need to appoint someone to the Energy Environment Committee. Has anyone given thought?
I will do it.
Thank you, Zach. You are officially appointed.
Hurrah.
Any committee reports? Scott? Anything at town council?
We had two things there. I don't know if you've heard, but there was a misunderstanding between the state and the town on tax collection.
Well, we all heard in our mail.
Yeah, and we didn't collect $1 million worth of taxes for reasons that we don't want to get into. But, so the new tax going out is going to have a supplemental tax above the standard tax to get back this money. And then in addition to that, we approved that the library wants to bring in an architect and see how they can use the library more efficiently. For instance, you can't use the basement because of egress issues and things like that. So we approved that they can use their capital reserve funds to hire an architect and evaluate the library.
Did they do the zoning change? Was that on last meeting?
That was introduced.
That's been notified.
But, yeah, we have to, that takes a couple.
It takes 2 readings.
Yeah.
But they did introduce it?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so that the first public hearing is the 18th?
Yeah, it's a process, but it started.
You do two public hearings, correct?
I don't think there's 2 public
One
hearings. I
public
think there's
hearing
one,
is
but
all required?
But it has to have a first reading, a second reading.
Oh,
Yeah.
Till,
So they introduced the legislation.
so it was, we got the first reading, but the first reading was simply just
Just a reading.
Yeah,
So you have the authority to adopt on the 18th?
second reading. But we had a public, I think the public hearing was the last meeting, right? But no, it wasn't, because the next meeting, yeah.
Yeah, because we just got notified.
I sometimes get confused because our public hearings are overwhelmingly attended, and it's
a good problem to have.
difficult to remember if we had one or not, because
So
frequently nobody ever comes.
So they have authority to act on the 18th? Because that'll be the second reading and the public hearing.
Yeah. Correct. And that'll be it. Okay. And so Bart will come to the next meeting and give us a big review.
Don't act so excited, Bart.
I'm
can see
looking
the
forward
smile
to
from
it.
here.
Better than when we have to go, right? In 2A. Other committee reports?
Just one more thing on account.
Yeah.
I did look at the notes, and I don't know if it was last meeting or the agenda of the next one, but the discussion about buying a police cruiser, and they were looking into buying a hybrid.
We buy a vehicle every year, right? Typically, right? Sometimes we buy 2. And every time we say, let's buy a hybrid, right? And every time Greg says, he can only buy through the state, right? He can't just go out and buy a vehicle, right? And the state, so he gets the vehicle at cost and nobody gets a commission, even though it goes through a dealership. So the dealer kind of does it where, like in their spare time, they'll do it because they're not getting paid for it, basically, right? And he can't get one. He literally can't buy one.
They're not equipped for police, or...
The hybrids still get a premium at the dealer, when the dealer sells
So
them.
the dealer's not willing to sell to the municipality
Yeah,
because
they
they're not
make
making a profit on it?
They have no problem selling 100% of their cars to the public, and they make a good profit on it, so they're not willing to sell one to the state, to basically what we buy from the state. Right? And so we actually discussed with them, well, what if we just go out and just buy one from a dealership, right? But we don't, the cars we buy aren't like standard cars. They have some modifications in them for police use. Even though we then, we buy a $50,000 car, and then we go out and put like $30,000 worth of electronics into it. lights and all that kind of stuff, it becomes quite expensive.
Yeah, no, I just bring it up because,
Yeah.
talking about energy.
Every
it
single
into-
meeting, we say, let's, because we did get one, but it was like some fluke that the car was available.
Is it more expensive to outfit?
Is it more expensive to do what?
To outfit a hybrid?
No, it's the same.
It's the same.
So all electric, they don't believe can be outfitted. They don't believe there's enough surplus charge. Now,
They'd have to charge a constant.
the police believe that the fully electric cars don't have enough juice in them to run all their stuff. Well, I mean, it would, but it significantly degrades the mileage, right? And so they believe they can only run hybrids.
I think that's, personally, for public safety, burning hybrids at this point.
Yeah.
Because when the juice runs out and they're going
Right.
after someone or whatever, it's like, no,
Exactly.
they're fast.
Yeah.
So I'm just,
Yeah, that's a discussion we have all the time with them.
I just, it's a barrier or a challenge we need to consider as we propose, buying more cars.
Yeah, no, it's, if we really wanted to go out and do it, we'd have to go buy them off the street, and somehow we'd have to find versions that are the police version.
Jeff, anything on Concom?
I don't have anything to read on Thursday. I actually honestly didn't see the agenda yet. I will say really quickly that I agree with the determination of the board on the wetland buffer question. And
You want that in the record?
Yeah, in the record, because it's a fact. And I would just say that I'm kind of surprised that I didn't realize that you can impact nearly a quarter of acre of wetland buffer without any input from the Conservation Commission if it's for a driveway. That's kind of a lot of land to be able to buffer to impact. So, and that's my list of suggestions for changes to the wetland ordinance. The wetland ordinance.
So no applications for wetlands before the Concom?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Permits. Jane? Nothing on CIP yet?
We'll be mobilizing soon.
I'm sorry?
We'll be mobilizing soon.
Yeah, it's not here yet.
I think that's it on committees, right? Master plan, we've just been meeting as chapters come in. Bart, planners report?
Yeah, since the last time we did, I can't remember if we said this or not, but we conducted some focus groups from the opportunity we got from Invest New Hampshire, kind of similar process how we developed the current zone before town council. I thought they went extremely well, relatively well attended. I think we probably got over maybe 120 folks coming in, throughout all the sessions. Soon we'll have an online version of those focus groups on the town's website, so everyone will have the opportunity to participate, and we're going to try to replicate the process as much as possible. So stay tuned for that. Again, as I said, Jane, we'll be starting the budget season, so that means CIP as well is coming up. So we'll be working with department heads in developing their budgets and any requests through CIP. So stay tuned for that. From a conservation angle, focus. So I think, I don't know if all of you know, that we're trying to conserve some property on Wadley Falls Road, owned by the Roses. We recently got $100,000 from LREC to help go towards that. And so that's exciting. We're applying for LCHIP funding this Friday. So that's for another $75,000. And prior to that, Conservation Commission, through their fund, they gave $15,000 towards the project. And also we got another $20,000 from Great Bay Partnership. And then we're looking for another grant opportunity. It's called Field Ponds. They're out of Massachusetts, Waltham, so conservation focus NGO. And then ultimately, we'd get a little more than half the money, and we would be going to warrant for about $140,000.
Any Audubon money?
They have nothing. Yeah. So that's kind of the goal. So we got as close as possible for the, to relieve. So we'll see, so we'll be preparing that for the town council to consider for the warrant. But at least we're getting as much funding as possible for it. If anyone's not doing anything next Wednesday, in the morning, we're having a floodplain training course here in Town Hall, in this room. So the state's coming to give a training, so a bunch of folks will be coming here to learn more about how to be better floodplain managers. And then, as maybe some folks have known from ZBA last night, the new road project was granted variance, so we'll be coming here next step. I talked to them briefly about if ZBA, if they were to approve it at the time, what would the plan for next steps, and I suggested a design review, just so that it's a good collaborative process to kind of work things out before a significant amount of money is being dropped into a plan, and so everyone can try to get on the same page and list their concerns. And so that was my suggestion. We'll see if they actually do it. If they are going to do it, it'll probably be for next meeting.
So they'll do conceptual review or design review? 'Cause-
No, it'll be design.
So they'll notify abutters,
Oh, wait. Yep, that's the point. To get everyone at the table.
and then they can speak specifically to what they're looking to do.
Exactly. And so the board can voice its opinion as
Right.
well. Yeah.
Seems to me the controlling factor there is going to be the septic design and the state approval of that. And that's going to be, well beyond our review.
Yeah, but also we have the wetland ordinance, so we don't know exactly what the yield's gonna be, because we have to understand the exact amount of wetland presence, the buffers, and then subtract that from the density. So that'll give us a better understanding of what they could do. And then, the design of the, or the layout of the development, what they proposed on the ZBA plan was kind of the long cul-de-sac. Is that necessary? So other discussion points.
So ZBA just granted a use
A
variance?
use variance, that's it. So, stay tuned. And then, that's,
Can I ask one question?
yes.
Was there something else at the ZBA that got
Oh,
passed that
yeah.
we may see?
Excuse me, off Hersey. This will be coming for the board at some point. Class 6 portion of Hersey. There's a small lot. And they went to the ZBA, forget what the relief was for, exactly.
Oh, to get a building permit on a class 6 road?
Yeah.
Frontage on the place.
Right.
Yep. But I feel like there was something else there, because they still have to go to council and here for,
Right.
The council to get it identified.
I think it's the statute.
yes.
Yeah, like we did on Neil Mill.
Right.
I think we just need to get input from, the council needs input.
From
From planning board, yeah, we don't vote.
Yeah.
We're just giving the council
Voted to
input.
support
That was
it.
what we did with Neil Mill,
Yeah, it was like a letter of support.
Yeah. or not.
That was a.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be
It was a
any
lot of
site
process.
plan review.
Yeah, it was.
No.
Yeah. So to permit a single family on a class 6 without improving it. That was the variance.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got a variance for that?
Yeah. So, anyways, they'll be coming.
So-
There's precedent on that road, down the road. The other side of Hersey, that's class.
Oh, but that's an interesting point, because it's a state statute.
But we have language in our zoning which,
Oh, so they got a variance
Yeah.
from our particular zoning
Correct.
language. The state statute is making them come to the
correct,
town council. And the statute is the council can't act until planning board has given comment.
correct.
Right, so we hold the public hearing.
We do?
Both.
Yeah. But the council can't act until we give them comment.
Last time we looked at the impact of some improvement that they were gonna do to the roadway, how they were gonna get the utilities.
Yeah. always extensive.
Had to widen it a little bit, the impacts of widening it when the,
Or comments
Country
where they
drainage
had to
there.
engineer the whole thing.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to the applicant, they didn't plan on doing any improvements to the road.
Yeah, I mean, they just want to use a dirt driveway.
It was
My-
utilities, like, they were gonna bury utilities, I think. On Neil Mill was
Yeah.
their plan to bury utilities to get to it.
Yep.
I think on this one, they said, did they say they were gonna?
They're
not
gonna
put a
bring the
septic
lines
system, or
down.
were they gonna-
They said they were gonna bring them both down, water and sewer, to the property.
Town water, town sewer.
So which end of?
You know where the new Tanner
Oh,
Circle?
Tanner Circle end, oh,
Yep.
that makes sense, okay.
Yep.
It's at the bend,
400
it's
feet
like,
down.
Yeah,
it's like
far.
kinda down the hill,
Yeah, it's far.
and like, it's not to the brook. It's
No,
before
it
the-
goes away, just right behind Doral, open space.
Pretty steep drop off the Tanner.
Yep, it is.
They're not improved, that's what I was thinking. I was like, geez. The bury sewer, and if they're burying sewer, they're not improving the road. Anyway.
But the other
Again,
land, the
something to
other
be
land
considered.
adjacent, the other land adjacent to that, doesn't that still have approvals?
It's across the road.
Cross Tanner.
Yeah, the other side, yes, next to Green.
Okay, so the land as you're coming down Tanner to the right,
Yeah.
because that's where they brought the lines in through, there's no outstanding permits there for units?
No. It's all built out.
No, it's across the street.
Well, you know, the ones across the street
Yeah.
aren't built out yet,
Yeah.
but to the, as you go down Tanner to the right,
Yeah, there was
That
a
is-
nice lot there.
yeah,
There's no permits for.
there's no outstanding permits
No,
on that one, that
no.
wasn't part of
Yeah,
the whole.
correct.
plan, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Bart? Good on
That's
that?
all I have, thank you.
Any other new or old business? If not,
Oh, can I have one more suggestion?
Oh,
Sorry,
sure.
for next workshop.
Yes.
One, do you still want to do it for July? Second one, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I was recommend the Riverfront
yeah,
chapter. Okay.
and,
Oh, I thought you were suggesting we go to the riverfront.
You can if you want. No, let's review that chapter.
Sorry, we missed it.
okay. All right, but in the meantime, get,
Yeah. You want a word?
It'd be easy to work with and keep you at it.
yeah, it would.
I'll hook you up, Bill.
I got sprung for the Adobe, be cheaper.
No. I'll send, if that's easy for everybody, I'll send the Word documents. We got it.
Okay.
I still want 3D.
You still want people? Okay. Just let me know what you want.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.